Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I am your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panelist who got here right at the last second because everybody else said they're not able to make it this week. And Spartan Grown was one of the folks that did not reply. So I was hopeful, as he often does, save myself and you all from live Greenstock talks. He showed up right here at the last moment so that way we can actually have a panel and a discussion tonight. And I've got a topic that we'll get into after I let him introduce himself. So welcome in, Spartan Grown.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you everybody who's watching. I am Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces, or you could shoot me an email, spartangrown@gmail.com, and I can help you with all of your growing or lighting questions. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Jack. I'm glad I could save you from another solo solo podcast.
Funny enough, I don't think it's actually happened yet. Maybe there's been 1 week, but I think every week it's actually been growing with my fellow growers, not just growing with Jack and or Greenstock Talks, as I used to do my own little podcasts. Very, very, very briefly. There's like, I don't know, 4 episodes or something of that. And I took over as host for this, and then it's been just keeping it cruising ever since. There was so many other shows on this very uh, platform, the Cheap Home Grow Network. We used to have Growing with My Fellow Lads. We used to have Growing with My Fellow Ladies. The old host used to interview individuals from doctors to legal. I feel like I've definitely let down the audience in that regard a little bit, but at least the people that are here, I think, are here for what I have been able to help provide with the amazing panel that I've been joined by. And this week we're going to be talking a little bit about, coincidentally, because I'm about to do it today, flipping to flower and your strategies on how to do so. I've seen a lot of different things, a lot of strategies implemented. I've seen it as simple as going from 18 on and 6 off for veg to 12 and 12 in flower. Just snap your fingers, turn the timer to a different timer, and now you're going from your veg into your flower or early pre-flower or whatever you want to think of it. So I've heard some people call their like day zero or day one the day that they change the timer. So that's even a topic in and of itself. Some people don't say it's flower until the plants are actually showing, you know, pistils, stigmas, and actual like starting to bud up or flower up. And for me, I've always counted from the day that I flip the light schedule. And I personally, to reveal and I guess start the show off, I'm not fancy with it. I drop 1 hour from each, pretty much, at the most. So the 18.6, I actually do a 17.7. That's because electricity in California is fairly expensive and it works better with the time of use stuff. So my lights come on right after the peak period costs drop off. And then I go to like that off peak and then super off peak and run my lights and stuff during that time. And during Flower, I used to do 11 on, 13 off because I really was a huge fan and still am of DJ Short, who mentioned that like Hawaii has that kind of light cycle and a lot of stuff expresses really well. And in my phenotype hunting, I've actually found 11, 13 to be really great, if especially if you have too much light, which I did for a while. But even when you have proper amounts of light, or even not enough light, I would prefer more like an 11 and a half on and a 12 and a half off. And I do a little buffer where I give 15 to 30 minutes on the front or back end with just all reds, where I've got 660 and 730 nanometer reds that I basically wake them up and put them to sleep with. And there's some debate about that stuff, but I think that it has shown some benefit in my experience. And for the very low electrical cost and simplicity of having them just on a second timer that runs an extra 15 or 30 minutes at the front or end, that's really worked well for me in flower. And that's the major change that I do implement because in veg, I just run a white 3500 Kelvin. Um, at the end of my veg cycle, I start with a 4000 Kelvin at the early part of my veg and move to 3500 Kelvin and then add 660 red, 730 red, and 440 blue on top of that 3500. And it's predominantly red. There's only like two or three blue diodes in that whole mix. But that's kind of my strategy for flipping to flower and how I change my light cycle and how I change my time cycle. And yeah, I'm curious if Spartan Grown would like to share what you like to do. Do you do any like step down transition? I know people in the past have talked about like 18.6 to maybe going 16 and 8 and then 14 and 10 and then 12 and 12 or 13, 11 and then 12, 12, etc. So I'm curious, how do you go about doing it? And if there's any reason or if you've tried any of the other options.
Yeah, I don't tend to do anything crazy with when I flip the flower. I tend to go from the classic 18.6 to 12.12. Um, I do have on my timer for my flower room the gradual ramp up and ramp down. So at the beginning of my cycle, it gradually comes on like 1% at a time until it gets to my set percentage. And then on the flip side, the same thing. I think it's set for a half hour where it'll a half hour before lights are scheduled to come off, it slowly ramps them down. And that's really just so it's easier on HVAC and the DHU and all that good stuff. But no, I just I just run the classic 12-12. I don't even do the 11. I ran 11-12 or 11 on and 13 off for a while, but I felt like I was missing something because maybe I wasn't slamming the DLI, right? So I probably wasn't slamming as much light as I could have. So I went back to 12-12. I got a little bit better results in my opinion, yield and just like the size of the buds, things like that. But I don't do anything special. I'm still pretty much, I guess I would consider that really old school, not doing much different when it comes to that than what cannabis growers have been doing for years and years and years and years.
My thought is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's
Yeah.
some really wild and exotic stuff out there from like gas lantern routines and Joe P's spin on that. And I personally am not a fan. The people I know who've tried it have not measured their before and after, or if they have, they really didn't like the results and they went back to an 11 or 12 hours on for light. And I'm like Spartan. I was a pure 11, 13 for a while, and I was just noticing because I had started with 12-12, admittedly. And then when I got more into things and read DJ's book and learned about Hawaii, and I have definitely seen and smoked good cannabis from Hawaii. So there's some convincing nature to that. However, I wasn't getting by any means bad results at 12-12. So I'm like, well, I can grow dank, big fat buds at 12-12 that are like amazing still. And any like phenotypic expression that I was attributing to like the 12-12 versus 11-13 could have just been, I was running different seed generation after different seed generation of different cross of different cross. I wasn't taking like the same clone and running it, uh, you know, side by side or, even run after run under that same light, which makes it sort of just I hate to say it, but like shooting in the dark and hoping and like, oh, this is the thing that changed these factors. Where if you control certain variables, like, okay, I use the same exact nutrients, the same exact pots, the same exact clones when I switched from my CMH to um, my LED, and then noticed, okay, these were the differences from just changing the light. And then if I wanted to change from coco coir over to a peat-based media, then I could keep the same lighting while I'm doing that change so that I try to only isolate one variable at a time. I've also been guilty of doing more than one variable at a time and trying to, I think only when you have a very strong idea that there's a known improvement. I had someone I trusted deeply in the community who had given me samples that showed they were as good or better than myself at cultivating this plant. And so that gave me a high degree of trust that when this person said something, I could probably um, accept and agree with what they're saying. Not to say that that makes them infallible, but what the circumstance really was, they had the same exact light as me. They switched to a new light. They liked it. I got that same light. And instead of waiting to do like a full run with just that light, they said, after I did a run, two, three, four, however many it was, then they started supplementing with extra blues and extra reds, and they were having even better results. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not just going to run the base 3500 when I can boost it with reds and blues fairly easily and affordably. Like I had a connection. I bought the little light halos. They call them anthelians. It was a like DIY home solution that I had to wire myself. And I'm not an electrician, but I figured it out thanks to Kyle Breeder and Ohm's Law. So shout out to those guys. But I saved myself a bunch of money and figured out how to, even way back then when spectrum tuning was kind of not even really in the picture, adjust my spectrum in a way that I had some good reason to believe not only my buddy had told me that, but when I started looking into research, there was studies that actually showed, oh, this 440 nanometer blue has shown an increase in terpenes, an increase in anthocyanin production, and an increase in cannabinoid production. And I think in the one case, it was like THCA, which is one that we're looking for, right? So it was a natural thought for me as a grower who's trying to get nice and medicated or high or feel good off the plant that I'm growing. I figured, well, I'll take a little boost from the Spectrum if it, is an option. Like the guy had the 660s, and I could have gotten two, just all 660 rings or whatever. And I ended up going with three rings, and like one of them was half and half. So I focused mostly on the red because I felt like that's where a lot of the production in you see even today now, like white plus red is a very common mix, and you're very rarely
Yeah,
seeing
red.
blues.
I mean, we all know how it helps in flowering, but at a manufacturing, level, red is the most efficient diode that you can make, usually 660s or the ones close to that, as far as how much watts am I putting through this thing and how much light am I getting out. So it's a very attractive thing to add to a light because it's going to boost your efficiency of your light overall too. So to add, I mean, if you want the best bang for your buck, you're going to get the most light for your watt out of a red.
Especially back then when diodes were more expensive and less efficient. I was buying into the more cutting edge stuff, like the CMHs CMH I had was good for its time, and still think it's acceptable to this day, to be honest. However, the cobs that I got were using to make the cob. I think that the mechanical choices they made were not the perfect ones, but the diode choices they were making were they were using Samsung diodes within those cobs. It was just how they were constructing it instead of dispersing the diodes across a variety. But I want to get back more onto the focus on flower and think of one of our guys that you and I both love, Subcool. Shout out to Subby because I was just thinking about how we can overcomplicate things a lot, but it can be as simple as you can go and buy your local potting soil and start your seeds in that and veg in that. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy. It could be big box store stuff. It could be your local garden center. It could be whatever. Ideally, throw maybe a little worm castings in there to zhuzh it up if you can afford to, or some decent quality compost if you can research and figure out where to get that affordably. But even just basic ass potting soil, if you keep a big enough pot and you water it somewhere close to correctly, and you can use sips to mitigate even that. Um, Going from veg to flower with subcool super soil, like if while you're vegging, you're like, oh, I heard the subcool super soil just works. It's going to be easy. So you mix up a garbage can full of it essentially, and then you let it sit while you're vegging. Those plants are growing, and that stuff starts to activate, break down, and become a really nice nutrient-rich soil. And I liked the sort of lasagna technique where you would go like potting soil or like lesser amended soil up top, and then on the bottom you had nice, rich like a base for those roots to grow down into. When they want that nutrient, they can tap down into it.
Yeah, the
And
super soil was the bottom half, and the top half was like a really light mix, like maybe a seed starter mix or sunshine mix them or full or some kind of base.
the nice thing with that too is the super soil because there's like clays and a lot of like different things in there, amendments. It can get a little bit not muddier, like it's still got a lot of aeration and stuff built in there, but it's not as aerated as like a nice wall draining potting soil might be if you get a good high quality one, or even like you're talking about like a cannabis focused or like indoor gardening focused peat with like perlite or peat with pumice or cocoa with something like that that's going to drain really well. Almost every flower I see outside cannabis and including cannabis. If you go to like the garden section of any store, look at all the flowers, like 90% of them say well draining soil. They want a good, well draining soil. And so some big chunk of that root system, half or maybe more of the volume, I think should be in that consideration. Where if you're on like an ultra natural system like Yellow Skunk Farms, where you've got like the actual layers and horizons, he can have a layer that basically has like very little drainage because there's areas that have like maximum airflow, maximum water access, and everything in between. But in an indoor gardening mix like you and I and many others use in a earth box or a pot, having that lasagna tech or whatever, where you've got a nice, well draining, not super rich soil up top, the roots can just kind of always be hanging out happy there. They're going to have some water, they're going to have some air. They're not going to be overly saturated with nutrients, causing it to have difficulty uptaking things. But then if they want that nutrient, that root can continue to grow, and like the base of it at the very bottom has access to the nutrients, and the top part has access to like good, clean water, air, mobility, etc. And so it's a really nice combination. I've seen so many people try it, both like personally that I know and talk to in the grow community, but also through back at watching the Weed Nerd days, like so many people that did the super soil just had dank ass plants. They were buying great seeds from Sub, growing them properly because he was giving good advice. And it's like one of those open source things. You can still just Google Subcool super soil recipe and fix it up yourself. It's one of the cheapest, lowest barrier entry, water only all the way to the finish. That was one of my favorite parts. He said, with organics, that's what got me off of mixing nutrients. I loved Heavy 16. It grew dank. I was growing fire, fucking amazing weed and cocoa, but I hated mixing up nutrients or putting them in a jug and shaking them up and pipetting them out and measuring all that stuff all the time. I had cats around, and I'm a little, admittedly, not the most comfortable just like a nutrient, although it's a base and they're all over the place, to me it feels like a chemical, right? Like if you drank it, it would fuck you up. Like, at least I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe you could probably get away with small amounts of certain ones. It's just I just felt more comfortable with the idea of, oh, I can literally just like mix up a soil and give it water the entire time, whether it's a Coots mix, whether it's a subcool super soil, whether it's somebody else's soil. There's like a local 420 mix that they sell at one of my local garden centers, and people actually use it and enjoy it. It's fairly inexpensive, actually. So they're not like can of taxing you super hard. And I know people that grow tomatoes and shit in it successfully, which is just so funny. Like they don't even know or care. Like they smoke weed and they're just getting it because they think it's funny and it happens to actually be good, organic, local soil. And so it doesn't have to be ultra fancy. I love the Coots mix. It's just a third, a third, a third, right? One third
Yeah.
aeration, one third Canadian sphagnum uh, peat moss, and then a third compost, which he prefers vermicompost or worm castings. And that's about as simple as it gets. And there's a very like 1% of like minerals and nutrient amendments, but for the most part, it's based off the Cornell mix, which is that one third, one third, one third. And he prefers the vermicompost for a lot of reasons that there's books written on them, the 50, 60, 70 different benefits of, vermicompost and gardening. Like we can go on and on from uh,
Yeah, he would say
resistance to
his
pests and
his specific vermicompost he would go into and say, because you don't have what I have. And so
And that's
yeah.
a good point. And I will say the one that he recommended, like only once on any podcast, I've watched him on a lot, and he's only let it out there, like I think one time. He said Terravesco Worm Farm, and they are commercially, or that's what they're called commercially. It's called like the Sonoma Valley Compost, and they have, I think they use organic dairy manure, and they feed it to the flow through bins that are like one of the best, highest grade worm bins that you can get at commercial scale. And they test it every 2 months, and they have a nutrient printout and they have a microbial printout. There's two made microbes. There's a little bit of nitrogen and a little bit of other micronutrients in there, but I think it's mainly about the microbial. Got somebody zooming by here, but I don't know if you guys can even hear that. But yeah, the
That didn't
microbial
come
stuff
through.
and the little kick of nitrogen. I just feel like I've never seen the plants react super negatively to worm castings unless you like buried the plant in like 100% vermicompost where you made it so muddy that there's no like water flow.
Yeah.
That could be the one time I could imagine like you're going to get maybe some fungus gnats and a little bit of an unhappy plant because it's going to be waterlogged. If you just don't do that, like you can keep it to like a handful or less and, spread it around, dig it into the soil a little bit. You're going to be super happy with vermicompost. And I know I'm preaching to the choir of Spartan because he's like, I got worm bins and, fucking crushing it with the
As
worm
I put
castings.
I put worm castings like a handful in each hole when I was planting outside just vegetables, you know what I mean? And we got probably 95% of our vegetable garden already planted in the ground. And yeah, the worm castings were there for sure.
They're amazing because they do so much from nutrient and, bioavailability of different things through the microbes breaking stuff down and making it available, the nutrients that are actually present there already themselves, but also like pest resistance, disease resistance in the plant that it offers to so many different things. I was just watching this story about how goats broke into like some Greek greenhouse. I think Noah sent it to me, and they ate like I want to say like several hundred or thousand pounds of cannabis. And like the only downside, or they were sheep, and they started jumping around like goats after they ate a bunch of this cannabis. Like that was the only negative side effect, so to speak. But other than that, it just like lived happily ever after. And it went on to talk about how like pretty much everything with a vertebrae has an endocannabinoid system, which I found to be really interesting. And but yeah, it's fun to talk a little bit about that. It's 420 here on the West Coast. And got to shout out Noah, the grower, and the rest of the panel who weren't able to make it tonight because they're busy. I know Brandon and other people, Tao, mentioned that they are not able to make it this week. So cheers to those guys.
Cheers, those guys. And that's funny. It's like counting sheep when you're sleeping, right? These sheep that are chomping on some cannabis, they're doing their jumping on, you know. That's the thing, man. I've never smoked cannabis and wanted to do any jumps like that. So they must have had some sativa or something.
It's funny. I was a high jumper in college, and so I smoked and got high, literally and physically and metaphorically. I don't know, all the different ways. And the guy who set the school record at my school was from Santa Cruz, cool fucking dude, Greg. Shout out to the homie. He was also a big cannabis user. He was super fucking tall, which is an advantage in high jump because you know, I don't know. I don't want to get super into that. But yeah, it's nice that I see a lot of, unfortunately, on the low now, even like in like the last 10, 20 years, people, well, because like look at Sha'Carri Richards or Richardson, the woman who got banned from the Olympics because she was using cannabis to deal with the grief from loss of a parent. And so I understand why people are on the low and not putting it out there. Like Michael Phelps got pretty widely shamed for smoking bongs, and he just won like 8 gold medals or some shit. So it's you kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And so I think a lot of people want to have their privacy about any sort of medical use, right? People aren't like out there talking about like the Xanax and Percocet they're taking unless they're like a rapper or some shit, right? Like a musical artist who might try and promote that kind of lifestyle. But most people that have it like legitimately prescribed, cannabis or other medications, um, unless they're in an intimate setting where they're talking about how maybe it benefits them or some of the drawbacks that they might have had from side effects of certain medications, including cannabis. I've heard people talk about panic attacks and shit like that. So, um, our lovely drug of choice at times has its downsides. I know even fans who say that they've greened out where they like ate too many edibles and they like threw up or maybe had a slight panic attack. And even though they knew it wasn't going to kill them, they just felt like total shit for several hours and couldn't really come down. And so, thankfully, there's remedies, CBD, peppercorns, and other things like that. But generally, as
Just in
much as
time. Just in time, you'll be all right.
that's so true.
You know,
Well,
people, it's easy to get freaked out, especially if it's your, first time or whatever like that, because you don't know what to expect. So I can understand where people get freaked out, but I don't understand people run to the hospital for being high. It's like, man, unless you get yourself so freaked out, you know, just so extremely nervous. The hospital's the last place I want to go. It makes me more nervous when I'm in those places.
yeah, there's a lot of things I dislike about hospitals, and I avoid them at all costs unless there's true medical emergencies. And, um, you know, I guess the checkups and things like you're supposed to get, but not going because I felt like I can relate because when I smoked Jack the Ripper the first time, or Cindy 99, one of the first times, my heart was like literally like so like tachycardia is a real thing, and my family does have a history of heart-related issues. And so I think if I was older and in slightly worse shape, I would have been actually concerned about, holy shit, like maybe there's something going on. But fortunately for me, I was at probably some of my youngest, healthiest at that time. And so it was more just a mental, hey, take a deep breath, calm down, you're gonna be fine. And it is funny because like mentally you can increase or decrease your heart rate quite a great deal. And I think cannabis can help tune into stuff like that where we might not be conscious of it. And then as soon as you use it, it makes you conscious of it. Like one of the research things I just saw recently was talking about how people with ADHD who use cannabis sometimes don't get the same types of feelings that you might expect, like the highs. It just makes them more attuned or present or aware of certain things. So, like in situations where they might feel overstimulated, they're going to be even more hyper aware to it, and they're listening to some of those feelings maybe and more actively trying to avoid or cope in a rational way that they can then handle it. So it's interesting to see because I know other drugs impact people with ADHD. I have people, friends or family that have told me, and I just know from the pharmacology when I went through psychology in school, how stuff even like methamphetamine salts or Ritalin or like things like that, those ADHD and ADD medications can be considered stimulants or uppers, and they're like pharmaceutical um, versions of things that are similar to amphetamines. However, you would think, oh, somebody's going to take an amphetamine, that kid's going to be bouncing off the walls. Why would you give it to somebody who's already bouncing off the walls? But to them, it's like the opposite. It's like somebody who drinks coffee and goes to sleep. A lot of the times, I think certain people with ADHD are in that similar boat, or just certain stimulants, medications can act that way. But getting off the cannabis topic a little bit
But
there,
that's the same as cannabis, though. Like that's the same thing. I've noticed people that suffer from ADHD, especially more extreme cases of it. They want a sativa, and the sativa doesn't give them energy. It doesn't get
calms
them
them
hyped
down.
up. It calms them down. It lets them focus. It quiets, their head down a little bit, and they can actually get a moment of sleep or rest or something. And that's on sativa. Stuff that other people are consuming it and are, I guess you call them more neurotypical, and they're doing the opposite. They're getting like a caffeine kind of effect out of it or something. So yeah, it definitely it's different for every person, just like every pheno. So that's why I'm probably forever a pheno hunter because I want to find them all.
That's the fun of it, and I agree because I've been on both sides of the fence. I've had the one that traditionally makes people have like the caffeinated feel. I think THCV impacts me traditionally like a coffee or an upper or a stimulant type high in cannabis, where if I'm consuming something that doesn't have THCV, even if it's labeled a sativa, because of the terpene profile, it might be um, high limonene, it might be super high THC or something like that, and labeled a sativa, and it might have sativa parents, but because there's not THCV in there, it's not going to have that stimulating coffee cannabis effect for me. But it might for other people. And so like there's some sativas out there that I can smoke in the afternoon or nighttime and I can go to sleep with them. And then there's like the THCVs will keep me up all fucking night. Like if I keep hitting it, I keep getting more energy. And it's like a no ceiling kind of thing. And I'm similar with caffeine. Like I'm pretty sensitive to it, so I can drink like one, maybe 2 cups of coffee a day. Like I do like an espresso in the morning, and I'm good for the whole fucking day. Like maybe two in a day if I'm like having a super fucking long day and got like very little sleep. But one is good. And I just think just like endocannabinoid systems, are all of our systems, we're unique. We are these little snowflakes and we all have our own little fingerprints, right? Unless you're like an identical twin, which I do think in those cases they share a fingerprint unless there's some scarring or burning. But at the end of the day, what impacts me one way is not going to impact everybody that same way. And that's in the 50 strains of green and 50 strains of purple, which I haven't released yet. I have a pretty large commentary about that before I get into the book, like page one. Like, while these are my experiences and the experiences in some cases of friends, family, people online, like I've delved into how it has worked for others and what other people account when they try these strains. It might not be that way for you. So like you might read, oh, well, OG Kush is supposed to make me feel XYZ way because I read in 50 Strains of Green that it made a lot of people feel that way or made Jack feel that way or Lady Greenstock feel that way. But until you smoke some. It could even be from like the same guy, Josh D. OG, like the original from a verified source. And like Mac 1 is a perfect example. Spartan loves it. He grows it well. He smokes it. He enjoys it. I do not enjoy it at all. Never have. And I really don't think I ever will. Maybe Spartan will, when I come out to Michigan eventually, someday, will show me some
If
that
you
I can
don't like
actually
it, I'm
enjoy.
not going to have you, force it down your throat.
Well, I will try it. Here's the thing. Even if I think that I don't like it, like even with like coffee, I'm like not into dark roasted stuff, but I'll keep trying it just to like have it as like a flavor reference point and to see like what is in there that other people like. There's like light roasted stuff that I dislike, even though it's very high quality and specialty, like floral stuff in coffee, like jasmine, rose, lavender. Just I don't like it in my coffee. It makes my coffee taste more like a tea. And I prefer more like berry or even like coffee notes, like actual just like roasty. I'd rather have a roasty coffee note than a lavender or a rose in my coffee. But I don't mind if it tastes like fucking blackberry or raspberry or anything like that. So, in the terms of just flavor preferences, like everybody's gonna reach for different things, and that, like you said, going back to pheno hunting and flipping to flower, one of the things that we can talk to is right now. I'm in the situation where I over veg the shit out of all these plants. My one plant that's probably appropriately sized is my Project V Vortex F2. It was the squatty pheno, so like it's the smallest plant in the room. I've cut everything back to that size. The GG4 was super tall. The Death Star was super tall. The Death Star grew almost like straight like a Y, like just like straight up and down, like very vertical aggressive growth. And I didn't
No.
do much if any training. Like I did single top and like some LSD. GG4 was more like a candelabra, where it was like a bunch of almost similar. Like I topped it once, but it's got like 30 fucking heads every direction. It's kind of overtaking both the Death Star and the Project V because it's just like a monster of a plant. So I'm just taking shit tons of
Yeah.
cuts off of it, rooting them, and getting them out to all the people on the Open Source Genetics Alliance. And then the last one I have is called Moonfog, which is like thick, fucking fat fan leaf, like dinosaur. Like it's got the biggest stalk. It's from seed, but it's been vigorous as fuck since it was born. It's a fem seed from a Humboldt seed company and Nat Pennington, that group, not HSO but HSC. And so I've got those four going in the same area. And basically what I've been doing is just cutting everything back until it gets to Project V's size and then like rooting or tossing the excess. And I'm at the point where like today I'm flipping and I'm going to do that final cut of the GG4, final cut of the Death Star, and the final cut of some of the Moonfog. Moonfog's about at the same level because it's in the same Earth box actually as the Project V. But that being said, like I don't think that's the reason that those are the two shorter ones. I do think it's more just the genetic and how they're growing. It's been that kind of case the entire time. But I'm worried if I would have waited any longer to flip, I'm probably going to run out of space. Like I have a little bit of room to move the light up and I can train the plants around and throw up some scrogs and I'll be able to make this work ideally. I say that now. Knock on wood. Check back in with Jack in a month or two
I'd
after the
say that
stretch is finished.
GG4 will keep going if you let her.
I'm gonna have to get pretty brutal with the training on that one. I'm gonna whack it back. Here's another thing that we didn't really talk about is before you flower, do you mind a huge topping? I'm just doing it out of necessity this time, but normally I would try and have the plant maybe a week of recovery time from any topping or transplanting as a general rule. However, this time it's like if I don't whack it back like really far, it's just gonna blow up and take over the entire tent and not even be able to finish because it'll block up the light to everything else and
I'd rather
grow
do
into
it
the
right then than a week into veg. I mean, week into flower, and I've done it a week into flower sometimes if it's gotten crazy. So,
That's
yeah,
actually an option I don't explore enough because once in the past I was doing it with Blue Dream again, which wasn't the greatest strategy, and then another one it was like a strawberry cross, and both of them were just ridiculous. Like they both quadrupled in fucking flower, and I just had vegged them too long because like a vacation didn't line up with transplants and things like that. So shit happened, and it was one of those times that Lady Greenstock was like looking at me, looking into the garden. She could tell I was like stressed out trying to figure it out. She's like, "Why don't you just reset it?" So I just like whacked everything and started all over fresh and like crushed it the next run. I like dialed everything in. I was like under 100 days start to finish. It was like a 30-day veg, 66-day flower, and just absolutely, you know, knocked it out of the park. Because sometimes if you put that focus in, you can actually put it all together. But sometimes life doesn't allow for that. And you got to know when to say when sometimes. I think a lot of people, especially on their first crop, I wouldn't ever suggest people give up unless the plant literally dies. But in later crops, if you've got a year, two, three, 5, 10, 20, however many under your belt, sometimes you might have to just be like, you know what, these mites or this power outage or whatever the thing was, the grow room flooded because something outside of your control, a crazy weather event, right? Like a hurricane comes through and like floods your whole fucking house, and the plants barely survived. And it's like, can I limp this thing together and run it on a generator and cost myself a bunch of money and like maybe get through to the end with something? Maybe. But like, is it worth it to like put yourself and your family out all that time and effort and money and energy at that point? So like, there's always got to be a point where it's like when to say when, right? Obviously, that's an extreme example. Most of us aren't, hopefully, going to be in those situations. However, sometimes they do happen, and sometimes even in less serious ones like mine, I just traveled too much, didn't pay enough attention to the garden, let it get a little overgrown, and didn't whack it enough during the early part of the flower during the stretch. Um, you know, it would have just been a bunch of burnt tip, less terp, unpleasant to trim, process dry and smoke bud, then like less than 100 days, I was back to having new good stuff. And I had friends and people. Thankfully, I'm in Southern California, so there's decent weed around, even if you don't grow it yourself. It might not be as good as you like it from your own home garden, which really truly is the case for me. Like I do think, like Spartan's saying, pheno hunting, like one of the best things, even if you get surprised by that one that right now, I don't know if this moon fog is going to get crazy big or if this Project V is going to go from being super small and like tight during the veg time to just stretching more than I'm expecting. But from what I'm confident in this because I've talked to the breeder, the guy who's sitting on the panel with me, and he's talked to a lot of people who've grown it, and he said the ones that are squattier tend to kind of stay shorter and maybe like 1.5 or double, and sometimes even stay almost like their same size during the flower period. So I'm curious to see what mine ends up working out to be like because I'm gonna smoke a bunch of it, probably all of it, because Lady Greenstock's not the sativa THCV high type person, and I think that Project V is going to be a lot of that.
absolutely. Should bring a lot of that. And even the squat ones will stretch some. The none of them will not stretch, that's for sure. But I don't know. I tend to pick the squatty ones because the squatty ones tend to also spread out on their own. Like you didn't really have, I'm sure you probably didn't have to top it very many, maybe once or twice, but they kind of just bush out almost perfectly in my opinion. So that's one thing I like about that plant.
It could have gone untopped. The top, it's funny because like it, it's like a side project. Like you could see where I topped it, but it was doing its own thing because like how I have two of them in the earth box, so I grow it up and I pull it away towards the other wall. And as I'm doing that, like the lower shoots start to shoot up and fill out the canopy around it. And so where I topped it when I topped it is just like another shoot in that side chain. And the plant is so I've had to chop little mini like going to the deciding like what to keep, I know these little toothpick or smaller ones aren't gonna, they might produce a tiny little bud, but like I have so many shoots that I just need the, pinky size or bigger ones that I have 30 of to just flesh out and fill in and
I was
not
gonna
have to
say,
worry
yeah,
about the
she's so
extra.
branchy. Yeah, all those little ones take them. There's no point in keeping
Because
them.
like there's 30 good tops on the plant. I don't need the
Yeah.
40 to 50 tiny little things that I could leave on there. Like I've just been going through systematically clip, clip, clip. Any of those little super small, like I say, like a bamboo skewer size branch or less, I've been clipping them off, and the plant just still looks beautiful. I love that structure. It makes it easy on the grower, even in the case of like I vegged for way too long, and again, this situation, I was busy traveling, work, life, etc. And when I finally got back around to doing things, um, it still looks good. It still smells good. I'm like, oh man, thank goodness for earth boxes because I could just, even when, if you leave it dry for like a day or two, like there's still water in the box. And like you really have to go days and days without caring for the
I'd
plant,
say a week. You have to do a week probably before you really hurt your plants.
which is a quite nice forgiveness window. Even if you're home, and like myself, I like to check on the plants twice a day, once in the morning, once at night at least, but don't always get to do so. And even when I do get to do so, maybe I won't have the time to work on them as much as I would like to. And so, knowing, well, oh, it's dry today, I can get to it maybe tomorrow or the next day, and I'm not going to be like completely kicked in the shins for it. Where if I was in cocoa, ooh boy, if that thing was dry tonight, it needs water an hour ago, let alone right now. Like that thing is going to be pissed if I let it go
Yeah.
till tomorrow morning. I
Yeah.
would sometimes like I'd be so tired, literally only maybe once or twice in my whole cocoa growing career because I would tell myself, oh, I'll just get to it in the morning. And I'd see the plants at night and they'd be like this green right next to me. And then I'd get up the next morning and they'd be like yellow green, going on yellow, droopy, looking so pissed. And I'm like, oh man, I could have taken, that extra 15 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever and
Got
made this
too
garden
dry.
look beautiful, but it punishes you, dude. Quick.
Yeah, and sometimes there's people, I mean, there's people doing way more than I'm like sometimes it might take two waterings in the same day, but not there's people doing, micro waterings and they're doing 5, 6, 12 watering events and it's like God bless you, but that's not for me. That's too many times.
Hopefully they're
Well, the
automated at
automation,
that
yeah.
point.
But I
But
just don't trust that shit. I mean, I worked in the commercial scenes enough to see what happens when that shit fails. And it's like, oh, I get
that's what
some
I'm saying. The
trust that.
sprayer fails for one day. It was getting the 20 waterings a day, and now it's getting none because the, you know, plumbing got messed up or a little bit of salt got clogged in that one line. There's 10 plants and all 10 of them look great. And then you get back to that number 11. You're like, what the fuck's going on here? Oh, it's bone dry. The EC is 2.9 and everything else is a 1.5. You're like, what is going on here? It's like, oh, this has been dry. And then it got like one watering with nutrients that forced its way through at one point or something like, or, I've seen it kill plants, but more often than not, I think it just puts them into a place where they're looking more like something we'd see in a lot of the research studies we see, where the plants just look unfortunate. Like, yeah, it's a plant. Yeah, it's a cannabis plant, and they flowered it and tested it, but it's not something I would want to have in my garden after maybe more than a year of growing, Like you make your mistakes, you get your training wheels off and start to understand the plant a little bit. But I think that they rely because scientific individuals might have maybe a little bit of that engineering mind and they think like, I'm going to buy this part. It automatically waters my plant. So I'm just going to trust that it's going to auto. So until they get kicked in the shins by it not doing it, the one thing breaks and then that plant is super yellow and they just can't figure out what went on. Or maybe they do figure it out and they're like, oh shit, now I need to worry about all of the 40 different sprayers I've got because, those two went out on that plant at the same time, or maybe 10 went out at the same time, or who knows, they might have gone out day after day after day and they just noticed it after 20 of them have gone out. And so, there's a lot of lessons learned. I'm actually happy to see the scientists putting out whatever it is that they can put out because I think eventually they're going to continue to grow and improve and get better. Like that's what all general science, when it's done well, it's either peer reviewed, replicated, and then when it does replicate, more and more people look at that, and then there's more and more scrutiny on it, and then they can try to take whatever baseline information they have and move it forward. And I think we're kind
Can
of
you
in a way.
imagine that? I'm excited for like 2 years from now. You know what I mean? With the rescheduling and all of the not all of, I shouldn't say all of, not even close to all of a lot of the red tape removed for research on it. I'm seeing more and more research already starting to pop up coming across my feed and stuff for cannabis doing a lot of things that we already knew was the case, but it's good to see the science coming starting to kind of back us up a little bit. So it'll make it a little easier to go in front of these politicians and be like, look, here's white papers that are saying what I'm saying. It's not just me saying it.
It helps to have science backing it up for sure. And the better the science gets and the more, uh, I won't even necessarily say widespread because there's been thousands and thousands of articles and stuff. But when it's done like in their own backyard or when it's being accepted by the Harvard medical schools and the Duke medical programs and things like that, and it's not just like, but and it has expanded much beyond just the um, doctors in the house, medical cannabis setup where you go and see a cannabis doctor who just writes prescriptions for medical cannabis all day. And I'm definitely not hating on those people. I'm glad for them. I benefit from them very greatly in my lifetime. I'm very thankful that they exist. Like I think they're one of the most important steps in the chain back then and maybe even still to this very day in many medical markets. So don't let my kind of maybe jokery of the concept that they can like have a card that says, "Come in and tell us you have back pain, and then we'll prescribe you cannabis for back pain or whatever." And I think that in its own way, that is educational, right? Because people should know that something like back pain is enough to get a medical cannabis prescription. Maybe they would think it had to be something like back in the day, it was only for if you had like AIDS or if you had very serious ailment. Cancer, for example, was in the early 1990s in California. One of the early reasons like Dennis Peron was able to get it was for people suffering from AIDS, people that were had cancer and they were benefiting while undergoing chemotherapy. The anti-nausea effects and the improved both mood as well as the improved appetite, which were both huge deficits to any individual who undergone chemotherapy for any reason. So it really, I think we have the shoulders of giants to stand on, obviously, and like we really did come from a true medical market in the 1930s and in the 2000s and 90s and in the modern resurgence. Because I hate to say it, like in a sense, many like we all sort of stood on the backs of the patients, people like myself and others who really truly needed it. And I still like have a hard time accepting and justifying to this day. Like I know how much it benefits me, but because the stigma my whole entire life, it was like looked at as like an alternative medicine and like different. Um, I feel like it can be people can just like belittle its value to me or to people and like or at least in their own mind. Like they're, oh, he just uses cannabis because he likes pot. He's not using it for his arthritis or his insomnia or whatever it is. To them, a lot of people will just play it off in their head to like, that's just another guy who likes to smoke weed. But in the reality of the situation is like it truly helps me and has helped me more than any other medication. And I think the pheno hunting allowed that was like for a couple years my medical card I got extended so I could have more plants and higher plant counts so I didn't have to worry about like going over the 6 or 12 or whatever it is per household because I wanted to hang on to cherry pie as well as Donny Burger as well as these other things so that I could the GG4 Death Star like I've got at least two in my stable that aren't going anywhere now so those would take up two of my plant slots and like the whole plant count thing is such a restriction to medical patients. Like if you had a tissue culture lab in your fridge with 100 clones, it's not hurting anybody. Nobody fucking knows any different. Like it's just a back catalog of genetics for you. But if the FDA or DEA kicked your door down, you would be looked at like some massive trafficker because you have hundreds of plants, maybe thousands of plants. And even if they're not flowering, even if there's not millions in cash or like drugs or what other, things that are restricted and firearms or something like that, they're going to come down hard, unfortunately, still. So we've got a long ways to go in terms of fighting for rights of people across the country, even up to including in California. I'm not happy with where we're at. I know Spartan's not necessarily happy with where they're at in Michigan, and they're still fighting. Like I remember the MCMA a few years back, bad cannabis law, basically. And
No.
now there's another one, I think it's House Bill 5757, something
Yeah,
like that.
it's another like MCMA. It's the MICIA or some stupid shit, but yeah, it's the same kind of shit. It's like less. force other people not to grow and make only one option for people to buy cannabis because that's what we need in the world. So when you mix, you know, business with pleasure, I guess you get bullshit. And so you just got to know to stand up when it pops up. So yeah, so we're just going to do that. Right now it's still in committee, so it hasn't been even introduced onto the floor. But if it gets read in committee and passed the committee, then it gets read on the floor, and that's a real danger because and here in the state of Michigan, they're just trying to straight up slash the amount of plants you can have. Absolutely ridiculous.
That is ridiculous because like I think they should have to come with some sort of evidence or proof that there's been like wrongdoing and harm to people, the community, businesses at large, like show some credible evidence that there is some major damage being done. Like what is a caregiver with 12 plants versus 6 plants? Who's that hurting, you know? And so I think a lot of it is
It's even more
overcoming.
than that. They've made some small changes that would be huge for some people. Like what's very common in this state is in the caregiver scene is that when like it's a husband and wife couple, and one of them is a grower and is a caregiver, and then the other one starts helping and be like, oh, this is doing God's work here. We're helping patients that can't grow their own stuff. So they become a caregiver. So now you have a caregiver duo who can, help multiple patients. Well, they've made a change to where they said that there's only one caregiver per residence too. So not only you have it cutting it in half for those people, you're cutting it in half right from the get because you can only have one caregiver instead of two, and then you're cutting in half again how many plants you can have. So just a death blow to the couples like that, and it's absolutely ridiculous. No grandfather clause either, so which means that one day it's like right now completely legal, and the very following day it's completely illegal. And they
It's like
wrote
a
into
Sunday,
this
Monday
bill
law.
that if you're over, they changed this bill too, real sneakily. If you're over plant count, instead of just a fine, you lose caregiver. You cannot be a caregiver again. So why is any of that needed? It's silly. So I can't wait to talk to the guy who wrote the bill.
I hate those like Sunday, Monday law kind of situations where it's like, okay, you're doing something totally legal right now, and then tomorrow it's completely illegal. And you might like there should have to be some sort of community announcement, like send everybody some shit in the mail. Like I get that ignorance of the law is not a reason to break it, but if you're gonna make little wrist slappy or even like criminal charges on stuff where on Sunday it's legal, but Monday it's illegal, like there should be a period where police and oftentimes there's some jurisdictions allow law enforcement a small amount, and granted, not all of the time do they take advantage of this, but the ability to make judgment calls and like have a period where they inform people like, hey, tint is no longer legal or something on your car, or like if your bass
Yeah.
is too loud, there's a new city ordinance and we're not going to give you a ticket this time, but next time, within the next 3 months, like if you keep bumping those fucking subs or if you keep riding around with the front tint on your, windshield, then you're going to get a ticket for it. So take it off
Yeah, in
now
this case,
or
think how
blah blah blah.
ridiculous it is. Literally, we've been since 2008. So it's been 18 years. The rule has been this many plants. Not hasn't changed. 18 fucking years. And you could just change it after 18 years, not really notify anybody, and then fucking make them lose their card if they're over plant count. That's
Well, and you said
diabolical.
it's the death knell to the caregiver. It's actually the death knell to the patient. The caregiver is going to be fine. They're going to be able to grow for themselves, and maybe they'll lose some revenue or income source or whatever if there was some sort of cash being exchanged or whatever. But the person that is on the other end who can't, like you said, can't grow their own, now just got cut off because this married couple that has been helping out more than they would if they were just individuals. And it's not like many businesses where you could just like, oh, as a resident, I'm going to subdivide my house into multiple properties. And now, so I have two properties, and like I'm on this property and she's on that property. So now my home is actually two properties kind of thing. So now legally,
It's
there's only one caregiver per residence, and my residence is 242, Sunday
yeah.
Drive or whatever. And they're 242, slash B Sunday Drive or something like that. And it's just
All because these are people who want to grow plants for patients who can't grow it for themselves. That's what's necessary. Yeah, I cannot.
we're fighting to overcome greed, and any business is susceptible. Once it becomes legal and there's money to be made, there's greedy fucks that come in and they're not even part of the industry, and they start to force these regulations on people that were part of a medical industry that was a cottage industry taking care of individuals on a very intimate level for years and years and years without any issue. And now this new law comes in and presents a massive issue. Like I was talking about, who is that other law? Who is it hurting having laws the current way? Well, nobody. Everybody's really happy with that system, seemingly. Like there's not a whole lot of complaint. Well, who does it hurt if with this new law? There's a fucking ton of people. There's thousands of caregivers in Michigan with, I think a half dozen. I think you can have like five patients, up to five patients.
Five, yeah, five patients. You know,
So in a married house, you're going to have 10 people that are relying on you, plus the caregivers themselves. So a dozen people, 12 people that are relying on this garden that are now going to, at least six of them are going to be cut out because the husband or wife is gone, and then all five of their people is gone. So you go from 12 down to six immediately. Just that number of people. So like literally every situation, which I'd imagine there's a handful, at least, if not hundreds
yeah.
or maybe thousands of,
Well,
because like my wife and I are both cannabis medical patients, and we live together in the same residence. And so like that awards us the right to possess and grow a little bit more than we would if, um, it was just one individual, right? So I think it's not only problematic, but it's harmful, like actually harmful. You're going to create criminals and issues where there is no need for that to be the case. You're turning good people into outlaws that are just trying to sort of be left alone and do what they've done for many, many years. Just like uh, there's some regulations with certain foods and things like that. Like you can grow some stuff, but not other stuff. And so I think the restrictions can become overbearing, and it's on us to sort of be civilly disobedient. And I think just to keep on fucking doing it. Like that's where with the whole Open Source Genetics Alliance, somebody asked in the email, so I'll make this public statement. I do have the GG4 that has been going great. It's been rooting amazing, and I've been getting them out to tons and tons of people. More people keep checking your email because there's more going out this week. But the Death Star, I got my own mother rooted and at least one other copy rooted. So I mentioned I'm flipping to flower. Those are both rooted. So at least maybe one person will get one. I'm thinking about keeping both just in case something happens to my one.
keep
I don't
both
want to
of the
have
mother
to.
and both out, then you'll have a lot more cuts.
That's a good point. That's a great point. So that's what I'm going to end up doing because I got two rooted successfully. And then by the time my next this flower situation is done, I've got two different veg spaces available, and I'll take those two Death Star mothers and just make as many possible cuttings of them as possible in the time that my stuff is flowering and going into the next run because I'm only going to run one Death Star at a time at the most ever in my four slots. So, and there's going to be some times, well, I'll just have it sitting back in my veg, throwing it from the cloner to a solo cup to a 1 gallon, growing it up as big as it can get it in the 1 gallon, and then taking a bunch of cuts off of it and then restarting that process. And while I finish flower and start a new run, I can get even larger plants in my earth box, which has kind of been I've been growing basically massive moms that are about to get flowered for the first time because they've both produced the Death Star only two cuts, but it's had a lot more cuts taken off of it. But for whatever reason, it didn't like my system until these two. So I think I just got
Take
the
a
plant
look.
in a healthier, happier place before I took the cuts. Sometimes I was just like, oh, I don't care if it's dry or if it's not looking the prettiest or whatever. I'll just take it because now I have time to work on it and I'm going to take it right now. But this last round, I was like, I need to make sure this thing's healthy, happy, and looking like perky and like I'm living my best life. And I'm going to get the greenest, perkiest, tippitiest, toppiest of the plant because the top is looking so amazing. There's like a little bit of the undercarriage. It's not the happiest because it's so thick in there that some of
Yeah.
it's not getting the light. It's getting airflow, but not the light that it needs. So I'll go through, prune, and trim some of the lower stuff off. But the upper stuff is where I've been getting the cuts from. So happy to see the first couple taking root. And I'm going to, like Spartan suggested, and thank you, Spartan. Instead of just sending one out to help one person, I can make two mother plants that can then produce 20, 30, 40, however many clones. And I'm going to also get the peat pucks and peat pellets. So instead of just using the water-based cloner, I'll have two different operations going side by side. I'll have the X amount of site oxycloner and X amount of sites of the Jiffy Pucks or Rapid Rooters or Root Riots, whatever is available and best working. Because apparently those
Hyper.
Velocigrow cubes are no longer available. Like so,
Yeah, man, I can't find them
RIP.
anywhere.
It seemed like
Miss
those worked
them.
well.
They
What
did. They
up?
were pretty good. I like the simplicity of it. It's like you can put them in like a dish of water, like sitting in standing water, and then forget about them. I love that shit.
That is a great system. I have seen people go heavier with the wetness than I do on the cubes and have success. So I think part of it is the mother plant that it comes off of, like how healthy it is, how happy it is. and the quality of those pucks. The Jiffy pucks that you like swell up are a different quality than like the Rapid Rooter or the Root Riot, but all of them can work if the conditions are right. I've seen people even use this like potting soil that they like wrap around the outside of a plant and wrap saran wrap around it, like the air pruning style, and take clones that way, where they know, oh, it's already rooted on the plant. I'm only going to cut it off once I actually see roots. And if it's not rooted, then I'll just maybe splash a little extra water in there, reseal it up, and keep retrying until they start seeing roots grow. And it's a pretty guaranteed method. And they even make these little like 3D printed kind of snap-on things for rapid rooters or root riots that you could like pre-wet, snap it around a branch, and then you
Yeah,
can
I've
like
seen those ones.
pop it
Yeah.
open, check, and some of them are even clear, so you can just see, oh, it's got roots on there, and you can just cut it right below that thing, and you got a little pre-rooted plug. So there's tons and tons of really cool options to continue to save and preserve genetics. Getting back on the flowering, flipping to flower, do you have any things that you like to do just generally, like after you flip while they're stretching? I know you've got control of your spectrum tuning now, so maybe that's something that we could touch on again. Do you like to go from your veg light cycle or whatever the last veg light is, and then how do you change that through the stretch, if at all?
So for me, I'm usually trying to control stretch it and then I'm trying to slow it down. I'm trying to make the plant stay more compact because I'm in a short space in the basement here. So for this situation, in those situations, I'm usually hitting it with a very similar spectrum that I would use in veg. Something that's blue heavy with maybe mixed with a little bit of reds in there, but mostly blue heavy to encourage it to continue to grow squat in tight internodes. And then once, usually 3 weeks in on most strains, most common strains, unless you get a real sativa leaner, after about day 21 or so of flower, the plants stop growing vertically and they start bulking. And when that I see that happen, that's when will go and add the reds back in, take some, even drop some of the blues out, and let them get heavy again. Another thing I like to do is either right before I flip, so late veg, or right on flip, early flower. I like to do a top dressing. I grow organic, so and I don't usually give it any kind of nutrients throughout the grow a whole lot. So once I do that flip, I like to give it something, and I usually like the from Brandon Russ the oh, what's that called, the humate
Humate and
fertilizers. I
one of
like
the
the
humates,
yeah, they're the
humate
middle
and
one.
humate.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
got a N and K, and then he's got a middle one that's basically just 50-50 of N and K. And I like that one right at that time. And then maybe in 2 to 3 weeks when that vertical, 3 to 4 weeks, I should say, when that vertical stretches over, I like to come up with that K. And that's all the nutrients they get for the grow usually.
I'm still admittedly using a variation on the reamend, the M3 mix that you sent me, gosh, years ago. I could probably pull it up in my notes if I transferred it to this phone, but um,
Yeah, I'm still doing that reamend when I at the end afterwards for sure. So they get that, but they get a push in flower too.
I get a similar for reamending and for flipping to flower. If I'm using a reamended soil, I'll just like dose it less, but use a lot of the same stuff like the Build a Soil craft blend, a little bit of different stuff like worm castings, Bokashi Earthworks, Bokashi. Um, I'll re-amend some extra like rice hulls depending on like if they've gotten like eaten up throughout the run. Because I top dress, I use those as like a mulch layer. So if I'm noticing like right now they're only covering maybe like 60 to 70% of the soil, where when I initially covered it, it was like 100%. But with watering and with time, they've sort of fallen into the soil and become part of the mix, which is what I want to happen essentially. But I also want them to act as a mulch layer. I just didn't go as heavy as I could. You can layer a whole half an inch above the soil if you really wanted to with rice hulls, and the water is going to go through just fine. I just find I try to use as little as possible from one, the cheap home grow perspective, but two, when you go to do the reamendments or top dresses for flower or like at the end of stretch if you're looking like the one thing I'll do. I was talking about the subcool water only the whole time, but if I flip to flower and my soil's like amended where I want it, but the plant is still looking a little green or not quite green, it's starting to go yellow. I've got two things actually. I like to do worm castings at the very latest to week 3, like when Spartans talked about the end of stretch, when they like are squatting and bulking, I won't go worm castings any later than that. Like I want to do the worm castings during or before the stretch. but also Brandon has a Cal Sil Plus. It's got a little bit of calcium and a little bit of silica. So that is another one. If I'm seeing a plant start to yellow, it's generally I didn't front load enough calcium. And I'm really light with that stuff. I'll like teaspoon it in because for a while before I got my fresh soil that I have currently, um, I was doing like at least the minimum recommendations for like my Spartan Grown Reman, which I think was like a quarter cup or half cup or something like that. I think it was a quarter cup even, but like I was going like full quarter cup with like spilling over, and like every single time it wasn't all being taken up. So by the time I did like 5 or 6 years of runs of this, I had just over amended every single time. So I started getting like a cakey layer of like harder soil towards the top where all these nutrients hadn't been well mixed into the soil and well amended. And I think if you go too heavy with the rice hulls, it can be hard, even harder to amend if you want to top dress stuff and scratch it in. So that's why I kind of go with like a fairly thin rice hull layer. And it seems to like I stick my finger down in there even if I haven't watered from the top at all. I usually only do like one top watering, or in this case, like the rice hulls are less. So I have a little like squirt bottle that I'll go over if I'm seeing it's looking dry on the top, and I'll hit it from the top as I refill the bottom. Because clearly, like if I didn't get there soon enough, like I was saying, I've got Spartan said like up to a week. I try to not let it go past a couple days from when that hole gets empty because I start to panic a little. I'm like, oh no, they need water. I want to get it back to them. So like, because I've noticed that even like within like an hour or a day, if I just always get to it like pretty quick, then the plants just perform so fucking well. Like if I keep that water in there and don't let them get real dried out. Because sometimes when you do let them get real dried out, like you'll see the soil start to like pull away from the walls. It's literally starting to shrivel up and shrink and get dry and crusty. And that's when I'll, if needed, top water back onto the plant, whether it was just transplanted or whether they've been in veg or flower for however long. I just want to make sure we're getting even moisture throughout the entire substrate. So those are some of, I guess, my tips for like the early flower. I think for spectrum, I mentioned earlier, like my spectrum is fixed once I go from veg to flower. But I'm just really happy with where it's at. And it does slightly change because I go from like in veg, I might be from like 50 to 70% of my max light output, maybe even less, depending on how big or small the plants are. When they're smaller, lower, but when they're larger, obviously it needs to be like up towards that 50% max, um, 50% mark. But then when I go to flower, I want to push like maybe 75, 80, 95, even 100% of what my light can put out because it's not getting I'm not over lit to the point where if I run them at 100%, I'm going to have over 1,000 ppfd. Like I have CO2 in my space. I'm not adding it. I just like myself, my wife, my cats. It puts it at like over 1,000, like 1,000 to 1,300. And with that, I'm able to push up to, I don't like to go over 1,000. 1,000 is a mark for me that I'm happy with. If I didn't have that much CO2, I'd honestly be happy at 800, 800 and 900 range for like the tops. And like if stuff's like in the 500 to 700 range from like the shoulders, that's also fine to me. For most strains, that buds perform pretty dang well at that mark, and it's usually pretty easy to hit that number from an electrical output standpoint for relatively small home grows. So with decent modern lighting, that's very easy to achieve. And so I'll dial it. Mine's relatively older LED technology, admittedly, so I need to upgrade, especially now that I'm in a 3x3, to a newer LED to perfectly kind of cover out my space. But the light that I have is still cranking, so I've been happy with what it's been producing and enjoying it so far, and still considering what I want to get into next on that front. But I almost you know, once it's at 100%, it's also boosted by those other reds and blues. So it's like more than the 220 watts. I think it's like 250, 260 or something like that. So for a 3x3, it's not the,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
you have to remember too that if you have a boost of like a 660 booster in there for reds, and you have a main light in there, when you dim that main light,
it's
that
a redder
six,
spectrum.
yeah, you're skewing your spectrum red, and then
It's just
when
like HPS almost dimming. Like I don't have control over my spectrum, but that level of change is small enough, in my opinion, that I'm okay with the variance because in my opinion, they're all good spectrum. It's not like I'm
yeah, that whole
with
range.
like an HPS, like when you dim it, sometimes it starts like you lose whole peaks and stuff like that. It stops operating like it does at 100%. So like with an HPS, I'd rather raise it than dim it. But with an LED, It's like, no, I'll just dim it because like although my spectrum is technically changing, the 3500K base is like 80 to 90% of the total spectrum. And then the last 10 to 20%, depending on how boosted up the main light is made up of that extra red and blue. And those red and blues actually exist in that 3500. Like when you look at the little LED like grid marks where it's like, here's your blue, and then there's like a little green and yellow spike, and then there's like the red spike, and then it just drifts off because there's no anything above. Unless you get like a 770 or 730 far red and stuff like that, there's not an extra spike after the main little like kind of general hump. But the point that I've seen is the boost. And what really kind of sold me more than anything was after several years of growing under it, every time the plants underneath the blue one, like directly underneath it, would get blue first, or they would turn purple first. Like
Purple,
the,
yeah.
yeah, it would show before everything in the whole room might turn purple, but the one directly under it, you could see like you could draw a line like a laser beam straight down from that diode, and that bud or leaves around it would be turning purple while everything else was still perfectly green. And the rest of the wave would start to kind of roll over it because it's all bouncing around, right? But like the most concentrated like message was to that little bud top that was like, hey, I got the message. It's time to turn purple. Or let's start cranking out that anthocyanin. And slowly but surely the whole plant gets the message and it starts to spread it around. And it could have happened naturally, like if I just ran the 3500, because like I said, that blue's in there. But the spikes, I do personally believe, um, add a little bit to it.
Yeah, and this is where we're talking about stuff that we're all kind of ahead of the science on, right? And so it'll be interesting to see because there's still a lot of claims of this and that, and it's just the tinkerer in me having a light with the ability to change spectrums. It's like, wow, now what do I do? Because, that's given me controls over something I never had before, and now I can think of not only like you can sit there and and wrap your brain around this for hours, man. Just smoke a joint and just go. Like, not only are we thinking about just like what we've been talking about now today, and that's, oh, at these certain trigger points, we can signal to the plant and kind of plant steer, crop steer with light. But but how about let's go another thought process and say, let's try to mimic nature in that the natural spectrum of light. If somebody asks me, what's the spectrum if I go outside? What spectrum is that? Well, I would have to ask the question, what time of day? Because you also have a shifting spectrum throughout the day, throughout the light cycle in nature. As you approach noon, you get more blue. And then as you approach the early morning or late evening, then you skew more towards the red, the orangey reds. So not only are there cues, in their life cycle, but there's cues throughout just the whole day cycle as well.
That's initially why I liked the idea, even before I knew about the Emerson effect, which is not what I'm about to describe, which is a separate thing. The Emerson effect is when you're running like the reds alongside the red that's in the normal white spectrum, which 660 is in the normal white spectrum of 3500 Kelvin, which is like a 93 Cree or CRI, which is like a color like 100 out of 100 would be the actual light spectrum color. So like they get like 93% of what's in the light spectrum. They're missing like 7% of it with like the LEDs of the time that I was building mine. It's probably higher than that. It might be like 95, 96, 97, 98 CRI or something like that now, but it's not 100. And they're still lacking stuff for sure. But um, yeah, it's just as close as you can get to the sun and the going back to the
Yeah, you're talking about
sunrise,
Emerson
sunset.
effect in 660
You
is
just
what we
basically get
visibly see
more.
at the par. But then when you add in far red, the 740 nanometer, and you run that alongside the 660, the plant is more efficient using that light now, and you get an increased yield than if you would just
Exactly.
run either one alone.
Exactly. And I have a little thing on my page saved to show this because it's really nice to have the visual. I'm going to try and do the share screen situation here. That's not the right button. Share. And we'll go window, Instagram, share. And then should start sharing here. And I'll click on this story where it says light info. And then there's a little thing that says Emerson effect, the
Yep.
combined effect.
Yep.
So are you able to see this yet?
Yes, yep, we're seeing it now.
Awesome. So it says Emerson effect enhancement. And so I kind of look at like the purple and I'd grade that like a +8. This is your 660 nanometer red. That's like your main red that's found in your white. The white diodes that get boosted by the reds are 660 nanometer red. And when studied individually, like Emerson did by using shades, he was shining light through a shade and only allowing a certain spectrum through. He measured how efficient it was being uptaken. Well, this is what I'd call like an 8 out of 10. This is what you would call like a 1 out of 10 or like a 2 out of 10 with just the 720 or 730 nanometer. So you would think like 7 + 2, you're going to get like a 9, right? So instead of getting 9, you got like a 12, right? So the combined effect of two, like if you just take the actual number, like we'll call it 8 + 2 to make this a 10. Instead of getting 10, you're getting like 12 or 13. So you're getting a boost, which is known as the Emerson effect, where you're getting more efficiency from the plant uptaking that color than either one of these things when given on its own by itself. And so that's the Emerson effect, which is different than the concept of putting the plant to sleep using 730 or far red spectrum after the lights go off, or trying to like wake them up, so to speak, by running that before the lights come on. Different effect, both triggered by using far red. And I try to implement both. I run my 730 nanometer, for example, alongside my 660 nanometers the entire light cycle, not just before and after. They're on the whole time. So I've got like on top of those three halos, I had like a little rapid LED puck, which is 730 nanometers. It's got like four little 730 nanometer diodes, and it's for like a 3 by 3 space, thankfully. Because when I initially had it, it was only for a 3 by 1.5, and it was
Huh.
maybe double what I needed. But now it's actually appropriately fit for my space. So shout out to Rapid LED. I think that they're still doing it. I looked at them the other day, and I think that they still have a website and stuff. I could be wrong about that, but they're evolving and keeping up with the times, I guess. I know a lot of the companies that are in the LED space, at least back when I was building my own and things or buying them, have not stuck around. So it's cool to see the ones that have.
Yes, it's good. It's good to see, especially some of the old time HLG still out there doing their thing.
They make great lights, dude. I'm not
I
surprised
saw
they do
him
good
out. I
at
saw
business on
Steve out
Amazon
at one
too.
of the, where were we? Vancouver or someplace. And so yeah, they're still out there doing it, but it's really the ones that you see are the ones that came from the HPS days, right? So the Horde Lux, you still see them out there. They've got LED lights. Um, I don't know. There's still a bunch of LED companies out there. And then there's like it seems like an endless supply of new LED companies coming out with the kind of like the man, I don't even want to say the Mars Hydro level of lights because Mars Hydro is starting to up their game some, you know what I mean? I don't even want to really they
They've
have
come a
some pretty
long
affordable
way.
lights. But yeah, there seems like there's a lot of startups as well. So I think that's still still a ton of competition there. So I think it's going to be a little bit for that to shake out because, man, with Schedule 3, I think it's just going to get more, it's going to help push down more and more doors and it's going to be more and more popular to grow.
It's interesting because I'm conflicted on the multiple new LED companies because at the same time, I'm happy to see the price points usually on them are lower. Um, but with that, I question the quality, amount of diodes, and reliability of the drivers and the construction. Like when there's soldering or electrical connections and stuff going together, like um,
Well,
I'm
really
not.
look at those things. I mean, look at if you can find out what diodes they're using, like what company diodes you're using, how many are on the light. That'll tell you a lot. And then, how many diodes, physical diodes.
That's a big help. And then looking for a reliable driver.
Well, and to find that information, you can say, what is your warranty process? If I have a problem with the driver, how is that fixed? Or, what is it at all? Is it a 1 year warranty? Is it a 5 year warranty? Is it a 20-year warranty? What
Lifetime, yeah.
if I
Who
have a
knows?
problem in 19 years, if you have a 20-year warranty, what is the process? What do I have to do? Do I have to pay for shipping to ship something to you, or is that
Will they
covered?
be
There's a
around in
lot of
20
good
years?
questions. Yeah.
Like
So,
HLG has shown some longevity, and
yeah, for
they
sure.
have definitely done a good business for a lot of different things. So
It helps they have US base, right? So that if they have an issue or whatever, they can, manufacture something right here and get it out there a lot faster than waiting for it to come on a boat.
yeah, and they can have like even if it came from overseas, they can have stockpiles of it sitting here in a warehouse that, like I think you were doing for a Canadian lighting company, essentially. But wherever it came from, you were the American arm of the Grandmaster.
Yeah.
LEDs, right?
Yeah,
So
and we just got news that we the paperwork just got signed, so it's official that we're are we upgrading the warehouse too here for the Michigan. Well, it's the USA operations, and that's man, it's so I was awesome walking through that place because it was like if you took like the square foot, it's like just under 13,000 square feet. So it's like to me that's like I don't know if we're ever gonna fill this place, but I'm sure, it didn't take us long to fill the last one, so we'll see. We'll see what we do with this one. But I'm stoked. It has docks, so it has three docks, and I'm like, oh, if I have a truck, I can have another truck, and then I still have a dock open for the UPS truck. Oh, heaven. So yeah,
that's
I'm
nice,
pretty
man.
stoked, man. I'm pretty stoked about it.
I'm glad to hear. It's it sounds like you guys are doing some real business over there, and it's good to see lights flying off shelves because that means that there's people growing out there. And I think a lot of his market, admittedly, is home growers, which is a great.
Yeah, a lot of America is home growers, and we miss out on a lot of these bigger grows that are interested in using our lights, and they really want to use them, but they want, hey, we have 10,000 lights. Do you have them in stock and get them now? We don't know. So we got the warehouse now, and now we can say yes, yes, we do have them, and we can send them out right now. So that's going to help us immensely to get these larger contracts too.
I'm glad to see things
I mean,
continue to
not just
grow.
cannabis. There's the whole lighting game goes into greenhouse and
Microgreens and
yeah, it's
vegetables and
in
fruit.
microgreens, and we have a microgreen kit coming out and nutrients that are supposed to be coming
Dude,
out.
rack
So
kits are so popular right now. Like so many
uh,
people are getting into the microgreen game, and I do think there's
I want to start, man. I just want to be able to have a fresh salad every day, if I can do it
so
with
good for you, like
yeah.
wheatgrass even. Or I told one of my friends from the Midwest that we're like eating and like drinking wheatgrass shots and stuff, and they're like, wheatgrass, like what, just like wheat seeds that like you don't let grow because like they had a wheat farm that actually grew like wheat, and so they're like, like wheatgrass? People are buying it? Like they were just so baffled because like they had like acres and acres of it. So like to them they never even
Yeah,
considered
to them it's like pennies,
like why
on
would you
the
go out
dollar.
and like trim like the grass right before it's even grown? Like it's
Yeah,
just it is a funny concept. But my cats love it, dude. My one cat, he's literally sitting. I have a wheatgrass patch. He loves it. We get
my
the
cat loves
organic
the
shit.
catnip. That's what my cat loves.
He loves it like catnip. He loves catnip too. We have little like birds and little mouse toys and stuff, and like a banana and a joint,
Get
like
you a
all
little
sorts of.
bowl, get you a little pot and just grab you a cat mint. It's like a mint. It's in the mint family. It's good for you too to make tea out of it. It helps a lot. So, but yeah, your cat will love it then.
I'm against tea because from America. Gosh
Against
darn it.
tea. I'm
Coming up
from
the
America
250
and
year
I think
anniversary of that
tea is
tea party.
very, very healing. Herbal
Nah,
tea.
I'm just kidding. I'm only joking. Just because it's the 250th anniversary or whatever of that. I don't know if it's the Boston Tea
The
Party or
Boston Tea
but the
Party.
that was I think the same year as the 4th of July when we declared our independence or whatever. But I just actually prefer coffee more. I don't actually like enjoy. There's a lot of I prefer tisanes, as Matthew would call them, like actual non-teas. Like I'd like a dandelion tea or something like that more than a
Yeah,
traditional
that's why I
like
just
Earl
call that
Grey.
an herbal tea, and that's what I like too.
Yeah, I'm down with those, especially if you got some like locally sourced honey from a good beekeeper. That's some nice mix in there. That's probably one of the best ways for me to get honey down, generally, if I'm not eating it straight because it's so delicious on its
So
own.
yeah, get you some raw honey and some hot water and some fucking any of one of your favorite herbs. You're good to
Up to and
go.
including cannabis.
Yep, yep. Ginger. Just start with ginger. That fucking help your guts so much.
I've been having some.
Stomach.
It's funny you say that because I had some ginger recently, and it got my gut back right because I was having some issues, and uh,
It'll do it, man. You have upset stomach, it helps so much.
and it's just got me craving good shit now. Like I was eating a little bit of garbage, and then like got that ginger in me, and it's just like, oh man, my gut's like clean again. Like I want healthy stuff, hydrating shit, like fruit and veg, not processed bullshit. Like I don't know. It's
I
amazing
haven't
once you get
grown it
that good
yet, but that's
microbes.
one I want to grow. I haven't grown that yet, but I would like to grow a ginger plant, my
It
own.
looks cool, dude. The root, it's
Yeah,
a cool looking plant.
yeah, for sure. We planted a huge garden. Me and Emily did a lot of work out there already this year, so I'm excited for that. We have tons of potatoes, and I did sweet potatoes for the first time this year. Hopefully they do well. They're in the morning glory family, so they're
I was,
basically
what kind of sweet potato?
fun.
There's like 5 different types or something like that are popular.
Oh, what the fuck was it? It's just their standard like John Jett or something like that. They call
Okay.
it.
Top Chef this season had a really interesting episode. They're in like South Carolina and they're doing a sweet potato challenge.
Oh,
And they were like
nice.
highlighting all five of the main sweet potatoes like grown in South Carolina or that were like made there, some shit like that. But they all had their own different characteristics and like ways of being cooked and flavor profiles. And I was like, damn, I love that there's like so much variety, even in fucking coming down to sweet potatoes.
And they have purple ones. I haven't grown those yet. I'd like to do those.
I see those in the
But
stores here. They're really
but
popular.
but
And
sweet
a lot of
potato
people
though,
love.
that's survival food, man. If you can, that's why I want to try to grow it. If you can grow a sweet potato, that's one of the most nutritious things you can grow.
I wish I
Whoa.
liked them more. They're so good for you. I'm just
Oh, I
a
love them.
potato fan. I'm not a sweet potato guy.
How can you not like sweet? You could take a sweet potato and make it like fucking candy. My grandma used to take that on like Thanksgiving and take a sweet potato and put so much fucking brown sugar and marshmallows, and it's like how could it's fucking eating candy? How can you not like that at that point?
Okay,
Oh,
so my grandma makes this. She's still alive, thankfully, but this is a recipe I do enjoy. I enjoy that. That's like a
yeah,
different
yeah,
that to me is
yeah. That's a whole nother
dessert.
monster.
There's like
Yeah,
the
you're still
marshmallows are
getting the
half of
nutrients.
the
Just
meal.
because there's bad shit doesn't mean there's the good shit goes
You
away.
cook a
So
lot
that
out baking it and covering it and all that cinnamon and sugar
oh,
and
you're sealing it in, man. You're sealing it in.
oh man, I eat it and I enjoy it and it
How
is
about a sweet potato pie?
mostly marshmallow.
Have you had a sweet potato pie? Come on.
I don't know if I've had a sweet potato pie,
You
but
should
I
try
just
that. It's going to change your
generally
mind. It's good.
sweet potato in general is not my thing, not
Oh,
my
sweet
bag. My
potato
my wife just
fries.
filled up my water like a
Oh,
lovely, amazing
fire.
person. I've had 1,000 different sweet potato fries from every restaurant that serves them, and I've
Yeah.
never liked a one. So it's like the Mac one to me. Like it just doesn't
Oh,
align with my fucking.
you're
I
right.
wish it did. It's like mushrooms, dude. I love all the benefits of mushrooms. I eat less mushrooms probably than anybody you know. Like it's sad. I'm so sad about it because I've tried so many times and so many
uh,
different ones, and they just never. Everyone's like, "Oh, Jack, you got to try
well,
the
that's,
turkey of the woods. You love turkey. You're gonna love
yeah.
turkey of the woods." And I'm like, "All right, I'll
Turkey
try it."
tail.
I've had like nice chefs cook it perfectly as you're supposed to. I've had it raw. I've had it so many ways, and it's just like, fuck, man. I wish I liked it. I could have it as a capsule.
That's me
That's
and
about
fish,
it.
dude. That's me and fish. I'm not, we're not really made to enjoy each other's company.
You know where you're at, I guess, other than like the lake stuff, but like being from the Midwest, out from Ohio, my dad was always like avoiding like sea fish. Like he would be fine with like lake perch or walleye and stuff like that,
I know I've
but
had walleye
never.
shoved at me. I've had all it all. Bluegill. I've tried all that shit. Oh, this one doesn't even taste like fish. It smells like fish. What are you talking about? Oh, wow. It tasted like fish. What a surprise. I don't like
Wait, you
fish.
mean the fish tastes like a fish? The one that I love more than anything, and I do think it tastes kind of chicken-esque, but it definitely has a fish flavor, is Lake Erie perch. They're tiny little fish, and it takes like three or four of them just to make like a single sandwich. But they're
Yeah.
battered, deep fried, and then they throw American cheese on top of it, and you slap it on a sandwich. And it's like by that time, you're covering a lot. Yeah, it's gonna taste like a fried, chicken because it's prepared like a fried chicken, right? You've battered it in the
Yeah.
same seasoning and all that stuff. But it's not quite the perch that came out of the water.
I've had salmon before, which can be very fishy, but it was fresh caught salmon in Detroit, and that was good as fuck. I liked that. And then I've had it like 20 times after that, and it's not been good.
That's me with
It's just
mussels.
like you just gotta get lucky.
I grew up eating mussels. I loved them. I would eat like 30 in a night,
No,
29.
I'm not
Never had
eating
a
mussel,
never
dude.
had a negative experience. And then randomly one day I like went to have them again. Couldn't even eat a single one. I was just like not in the mood and I've never been in the mood ever again. Like my wife gets them. It's like clams, oysters. I'm not a chef like that. I'll eat shrimp, lobster, crab, but definitely not into the fucking mussels or oysters. And I used to love them. It's just it's so funny how our palates can change. And I
Yeah.
like in that case, like I didn't even have a bad experience. Like with like beer. I threw up drinking Heineken when I was way too young on New Year's. I like snuck beers. My
So you
parents
can't
like,
touch it now.
I can't even smell it, dude. It like makes me
That's me
gag
and rum.
smelling it.
Ugh, rum for me. That's me. The smell of it makes my
I
stomach
could
hurt.
drink every other fucking beer, every craft beer, every Natty Light, every Coors Light, every Miller Light, every fucking shit beer. So the quality stuff. I've had like barley beer. That's like a wine. It's like 18% alcohol.
It's a
No
fucking
issue.
weed.
But you give me a Heineken, I'm just gonna be like, And I have a friend who works at Heineken, and I'm gonna go and visit Heineken in Amsterdam at some point to hang with them. But they have like 250 different brands underneath
You're
their
gonna go
umbrella.
there and just be sick? Why would you do that to yourself?
Well, I'm
Like,
not
hey, but I'm
gonna
gonna go all the way to the source and show them how much they make me sick.
I'm gonna not get the actual Heineken. I'm gonna get the
Oh,
other shit that they serve,
yeah, give
and
me
more
something
so just to
different.
see like the factory and like the process because it's such a I appreciate even if I'm not like into alcohol as much these days. I just appreciate like from a business perspective because they're also in like an overly heavily regulated business that serves intoxicating substances to people in a way that is limited in marketing. You can't market to kids, and like in Ohio, I think you couldn't buy liquor on Sundays for the longest time. It still
Yeah,
might
there's
be that way,
counties like there's dry counties too. You can't buy it anytime.
and anywhere exactly. And
Yep.
so I understand like that laws are not they're fluid, you know, and I do like that. I like that we're able to actually make change. Like for a long time, you weren't able to have alcohol at all. Fucking prohibition, right?
Yep.
We overturned that eventually, but there's still places that remnants hang. Like I'm from Ohio, and I remember, unfortunately, that there was a criminal case one time where one of my friends was being accused of something falsely, and thankfully I was able to be like an eyewitness and verify that they weren't where um, people were saying that they were, etc. However, when I part of my thing was I was driving with a lady that I was talking to. This was before Lady Greenstock, and we were going to get alcohol, but like it was like a Saturday night, and it went from like midnight or like 11 to midnight, and because it was Sunday, we could no longer buy alcohol, so we got all the way to the fucking place just to find out like, oh fuck, we didn't get here. It was like 12:01, and like legally they could not sell it.
That's like a That 70s Show episode, is what that is.
It literally felt like it, man. And I that's why I love that show so much. It's like it's so
Me
fucking
too.
relatable. Like if you've ever been in a circle, like where they like pass it around, I love
Yeah,
that. I could talk about that show all the time.
it's a
Shout out to
hilarious
Tommy
show.
Chong. He's in there as a regular guest appearance.
Yeah.
But man, that's a fantastic show all the way around. And I think it doesn't like denigrate cannabis to the point that a lot of other media does. It makes it seem like over the top and so wacky that it seems like this acid level. And I'm not against acid or whatever, but they
Right.
make it seem
There are
like
properties it just doesn't have.
yeah, they would make it even like alcohol and dare. They made it seem so over the top, crazy that I was like, oh my God. When I actually started trying, I'm like, they fucking misrepresent stuff so badly that it really fucks up our trust
Yeah,
of
I'd
the
love
people
to
telling us stuff.
see. That would be refreshing to see a recurring, like a show where it had recurring episodes. It wasn't just a movie, a recurring show that had within that show. Don't care what the fucking plot was or anything, but within that show, that cannabis was just a medicine for somebody that helped them, and it wasn't really talked about more than that. But oh, this is my medicine. I'm just gonna. Okay, now I feel better, and go about their day, and just show it in a positive light like that. That would be so refreshing to me instead of always being the butt of the joke, you know?
Yeah,
But
it's
like Tommy,
typically
I've had the pleasure and blessing of interviewing him on a couple of different shows I've been on, and he said himself is like that was like the only way they could even break through was like through comedy. Then people are like, okay, we're just joking, so you can go ahead and do it. He's like, and that's really the only way you could get that stuff on the big screen to even. And then it was so wildly popular, it kind of showed you that okay, there's a lot of support from the public here that they're seeing the same thing we are. So it's almost like an undercover uh way to get it on the big screen. So
it's like South Park can say jokes that you wouldn't be able to say with like humans or like Family Guy
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's cartoons. It's like, oh, they can kind of get away with a little racier or more, politically incorrect humor than they would otherwise be able to say if it was like a human actor, like
yeah. And it's
Ben
not, and
Stiller can't
sometimes it's
say that.
not even about being, is it funny? Is it do you have a good sense of humor? It's a lot of times humor is kind of there to check the seriousness of our lawmakers or ourselves or our society, whatever it is. But to have that comedian or that court gesture there to kind of just poke fun at those that you normally don't get poked fun at, and you can't get away with it. And sometimes I mean, I don't know, I think it's a super important role that a lot of people don't really realize. They look at it at face value and don't realize that there's a lot of important work really being done there.
The normalization that you're talking about is something I would like to see more of, where it's not always the jokey joke, like, oh, this is
Yeah.
the silly stoner guy that works at the photography shack or whatever, or like this is the part of the show where everyone's like unwinding and like just getting stoned and having fun.
Yeah,
Which
even
like
if it was, I could see it in my head, even if it was cut scenes of like some guys have a great, some guys just went to like a football game or something, had a great time, and they all leave, or they went to a party and they came back and they all leave, go home to their own thing. And this guy, goes home, does traditional, like, oh, he grabs a beer out of his refrigerator and sits down, and he turns on the TV and whatever's on, football game, whatever. But the next guy, he just goes, grabs his bong, or he grabs a joint and he's doing the same thing, the same de-stress, thing. but nothing really be said. You know, you don't have to highlight it or anything, but just make it like that's a normal thing. It's a normal thing that an adult can do, you know?
Like Brady Bunch style, they're like flashing between rooms, showing everybody about to go
Yeah.
to bed, winding down, and it like pans from one to the next to the next. And there's not even dialogue. It's just showing this is a normal part of their routine, their movement. And it's not like a joke. Like you're saying, it's he's using this to go to sleep, or he's using this to unwind and watch some TV at the end of a long day. And maybe there's pain that's being relieved or something like that, but it doesn't have to be explicitly spoken about. And I do think the more content that I consume out there, the more I'm seeing, even on like my wife and I do admittedly watch some Bravo, which is like the Housewives and some of the other like I was talking about Top Chef earlier. That's another Bravo television program. But on Housewives right now, the Real Housewives of Rhode Island, where our old host is from, one of the women is married to one of the people who's a very large operator in the very small Rhode Island scene. And not that it's a small like money thing. There's only so many. It's like Florida, where there's like only so many licenses. Rhode Island is kind of like from what I'm taking from what I've seen from the show. I don't have too much experience from what it sounds like. It seems like everybody kind of knows everybody. And even if you don't, there's places like people know like, oh, here's where these mansions are, and here's this and that, and like, oh, they're not from Rhode Island, they're from Jersey, but there's just kind of like that whole thing going on. But um, this one prominent character is like they're not hiding the fact that like the money, the wealth, the lifestyle, the status and the stuff, it's like in part coming from the fact that like they're a big cannabis operator and like they talk about their use and how they're benefiting from it like on the show. So like it is in that case being normalized. Like I watch even on like Housewives of Hollywood, like sometimes they'll go to Amsterdam and like take a space cake and they'll like in that case giggle and have a fun time. But then in the other case, they'll be like here in California and like smoking a joint while they're just like in Temecula, they visit wine country, but they're chilling in the hot tub smoking a joint afterwards, just not saying like, "Oh, hey, look at us smoking the joint." They're just having their conversation, and they happen to be smoking one. And so I'm actually like happy to see fucking housewives representing cannabis in like a positive, normalizing way. It's less so in like sitcoms or TV programs and stuff like that. I think it really comes down to advertisers and certain demographics are more comfortable. I think the Bravo viewing audience is more okay with uh just general wider open worldview and certain perspectives. And so they're not like as turned off. Like if you're not turned off by like the housewives fighting, you're probably not going to be turned off by them like having a joint on the TV or whatever, Like some of the shit that they do is like really wild and over the top. And I think that even they will admit that, it's, they talk about it and it's part of what makes it entertaining and whatever to watch. But the fact that usually when cannabis is being shown, it's like not being talked about negatively. They're almost never like, you have a cannabis problem. It's like, no, like you drink too much or something, like you're doing some other drugs. But like the cannabis is like almost never like thrown in people's faces. It's like, oh, like that's like a healthy alternative. Like they're actually kind of considering it how like you and I might. They're just like, I'm drinking less wine and I'm smoking more joints or something like that, or I'm having an edible before I go to sleep at night, or I like to have them when we're traveling, is just like to have fun with the girls instead of drinking or something like that. And like, man, they're in their own way. They have a way bigger audience than we do, obviously. So I'm happy as fuck to see it represented positively in that light because like every category of people can grow. Like there can be more women using it, there can be more elderly using it, there could be more younger people using it. Like I think it's only 15, 20 roughly percent or something of the population. And I do personally believe a much, much larger percentage of that population could benefit from it. And I'm not one that's like, oh, you need to trade alcohol for cannabis or something. But I do think that's part of the reason that we're seeing. I was just at the grocery store the other day and I heard an alcohol rep saying like, yeah, man, numbers are just down. Like I think it's GLPs and cannabis. They're blaming like the weight loss drugs and cannabis use for the lack of alcohol sales, which in some part, maybe people that are using either one of those things are less likely to want to consume alcohol. I know that was the case for me. When I started smoking weed in high school, I basically stopped drinking because as soon as I would always smoke first because like a little bit of social anxiety. I don't want to be fucking like stressed out at a party. I want to be like fucking chilling, like having a good time and not worried about somebody judging me or like is some shit gonna happen. 'Cause sometimes I'm not like from a bad area, but occasionally some shit would go down, right? Like some people didn't act right and um you're doing something illegal by partying in high school or whatever. So like there's always the chance that the cops can come and bust you and you're gonna like maybe have to run or fucking deal with getting busted or some shit like that. So there's a level of stress that went into going to a high school social gathering that I was like, all right, I have access to weed. Like my older brother sold it or had it around and so I was like, fuck it, I'll get some weed, fuck it, smoke it before I go. And I'd go and versus like not smoking before, I could drink just fine if I didn't smoke anything. But if I smoked a bunch and I was nice and high, I'd try and drink and like the beer, I could just taste it was like not as enjoyable tasting. Like I just like couldn't get
Yeah.
past one or two. And I'd just be like, oh man, this stuff's
There's a
rough.
thing, there's a lot of people that enjoy both, like a crossfade they call it, and
Yep. They say that
I
here.
know people that have it's helped them consume far less alcohol, where they can get where they need to be. We're putting that in air quotes, what I've been told so many times. I can get to where I need to be with far less, and that's to me, I look at that as harm reduction. I mean, that is harm reduction. So because I mean, my opinion, it's not just my opinion, it's scientific fact now.
There's a Surgeon General warning on it. It says may
Yeah,
cause,
alcohol is a
cancer, liver
poison.
damage, birth
That's a
defects.
literal poison to your body. As much as you can enjoy it, I'm not saying it's not enjoyable. I've drank. I'm
They do
just
put those
saying.
same warnings on cannabis, unfortunately, in California, or
Yeah.
a lot of them. But like, here's an example: Dos Equis. Here's a beer, an empty one, because Lady Greenstock actually had one this Sunday night. And she used to be more of a wine or a tequila person, which are both much higher concentrations of alcohol. And so beer is a much lower concentration. And so cannabis and, things like that can help with I think like you're saying moderating even if you do enjoy both. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to judge anybody who does use both. It's I think just about finding the balance that works best for each individual. And I just think as much cannabis as we can comfortably enjoy, as long as you're not getting yourself like I've found with caffeine, I can over caffeinate myself pretty easily. Like if I had 3 shots of espresso, I'm gonna be like on edge and like zoom in and like fucking anxious. Where with cannabis, it's pretty hard for me to get to that place unless I like dose myself with an insane amount of RSO, like it's like several grams in like a very short period of time. Um, it's so rare that I've ever like in modern times because I am personally somebody who stopped believing in tolerance breaks as somebody who benefits so greatly from it from a mental perspective, mental clarity, mental health, from my arthritis, like my hands shake way less partially anxiety, but I have osteoarthritis in both hands. I broke every finger in both hands multiple times, multiple boxer fractures in both hands from hitting shit back before I started using cannabis and had a better control of temper and things like that when I was young and more dumb. And now it's helped just regulate so many different things that I'm like, I kind of look at it as like insulin or something like a diabetic. Like, why would you stop
Yeah.
taking insulin if you're type 1, right? It's like to me,
Well, there's a difference too, is like I feel like that you get tolerant. Like I have a tolerance to it. Like it takes more to get the buzz feeling, but I don't feel like that's always the case for the effects as far as, and I'm not saying the buzz feeling, but like the medicinal effects that I'm looking for if I'm trying to look for a pain relief or something. It's possible that like what you're saying, you can take maybe it's the same dose every day and never take a tolerance break. But as long as you're not going higher than that dose, your tolerance should stay pretty steady, and it's still what is it? I think it's called the clinical term is the lowest effective dose. Like what the idea is, medicinally speaking, is to consume just the right amount, the least amount to get you what you need to get the effect you need. And from a cheap home grow aspect, that's fucking gold, right? Because now you're going to consume a whole lot less. Um, that's not all, that's not everybody's probably plan, but from a medicinal standpoint, especially if people are on fixed budgets or whatever like that, you can still be like so in tune with your body to notice things like what Jack was just saying was like my hands aren't shaking anymore. Where some people might smoke a joint and never notice that, right? They're looking to get high for another reason. They're jamming music or something else and just having a good time and not realizing that like a daily user notices those things, notices, oh, instantly my hand stops shaking. Or if I smoke right before bed, I sleep all the way through the night to where if I don't do that, I wake up in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? Or whatever. There's so many different
Lady
examples we
Greenstock
could give. And it's
just
like
had that.
maybe when I smoke right before bed, in that instance, I also didn't feel the high in my head, but I still sleep all the way through the night. So it's not always that feeling in your head saying if it's working or not, I guess is the point I'm getting at.
It's amazing because like My wife works for this company, AWC, American Weed Company or American Hemp Co., depending on the national brand versus like state of California. And they just dropped these like pretty fast onset beverages. And one of her friends in Arizona was trying it, and she was saying like she had some other reasons that she wouldn't be normally feeling well based on other medications they're taking. And when they tried this drink, it helped them sleep all the way through the night, like you were just talking about. And instead of feeling sick like they normally would after taking their medicine, they like even after like a big meal or whatever, which would normally like trigger them to feel ultra bad the next morning. They tried this beverage and they slept straight through the night and they didn't wake up and they're just like shocked. You know, it's because I think when you find that right dose and that right product in the whether it's cannabis space or elsewhere, it can really kind of, I think sleep is such a huge key.
I was just
And
gonna say that could be life changing for somebody who hasn't got a good night's sleep in years. They get a good night's sleep, and I mean, when they come back to you, they can't stop telling you about. Well, I can't believe what's going on. I mean, I slept all. I didn't wake up even once. You know, it's just like you feel so good, but at the same time, it's like I'm not doing anything. I just gave you this plan.
I compare it almost to like a post-sex glow, like the happiness you feel of like after having like a really good experience like that, where you're just like can't wipe the smile off your face. I've had that when I was a delivery driver. I would go see the same patients over and over, and sometimes people would pick up a small amount, maybe daily, or they were just so happy with the experience they would order something the next day so that I could come by and talk to them. And they're like, "Man, that thing you gave me, like just smiling ear to ear. Like I slept for the first time in 10 years or something like that. You know, like they tried CBN or RSO or something like that. And it's just amazing because I do believe sleep is one of the best ways to get back on track if you're having any health issue, mental health, physical health, etc. Short or long term. Like they say, a lack of sleep long term is related now to like several different types of cancer. So if you're just chronically undersleeping and thinking like, oh, I'm hustle grind set, uh, alpha Chad, giga, whatever, um, don't listen to some of those people online, but also take care of yourself, man. Sleep is so important. Like
I think
it's
cannabis for me is like what I found in my time with it is that if maybe not, like I said, maybe appetite. Maybe appetite is the only thing I can think of that cannabis is like for me the number one thing will almost always work for somebody tells me that, you know, if someone tells me I don't have an appetite, yeah, that's cannabis is going to work really well. And then the second one is sleep. I've had people tell me that they've been on all different type of sleeping pills and things like that, and those don't even help. And they told me, I don't care what pill you're going to give me, you know, with this cannabis, it's not going to help. And I'll just give them some cannabis oil and, and a pill, and boom, they're like, I can't believe it. It worked. And I tell them, don't take it with the other medicine. Don't take a sleeping pill with it. Just take this instead and tell me what you think. And boom, you know what I mean? And it's like if I find your dose, I'm like, it may not work, but until I find your dose. There are rare cases where people don't metabolize it and they don't get they don't get high. But there's still other compounds besides THC in that cannabis oil,
well, and
right?
even if they don't
The
feel
other
high,
cannabinoids, the other terpenes, so there's still stuff that's going to help. And I don't know. I would still go the same route with somebody who has said that they never get. I've had someone tell me they never got high from edibles before, and I said, okay, well, let me give you some of this cannabis oil, and they had some, and they didn't really feel anything until they drank some coffee. They were drinking some coffee after the fact, about an hour after, I think it was, and then the coffee did something to make it,
activate it.
yeah, activate it, and boom, they felt it. So it might just be something that you're
It
doing.
activates mine. That's definitely a
Yeah.
trigger. I think that the coffee, the hot water breaks that oil up and it helps maybe break the blood barrier or something, or helps it break down better in the GI tract, whatever it is. But I think going back just a bit, like the microdose concept, the lowest possible effective dose, the lowest therapeutic dose. Bong rips, I think, are such a great thing for that. Like as the show goes on, like I'm not just toking as much as I possibly can. It's like, I feel like I could use another rip. You know, it's like it depends on the strain. It depends on how much I've had before the show. It depends on how much RSO I've taken. But like for when I first started making RSO and I just had like grams and grams and grams of it, I was like, oh man, like once I got that return on investment for my little machine, and I was like, this is basically free money. Like I've just like thrown my trim and it's now I'm getting
I
this
got
stuff that I
this out
used
of
to
my
pay
trim. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
$40 a gram, $50 a gram for a while, like to get this shit for like my medical purposes. And now I'm getting it for what feels like free, because I paid off the machine, I've got the alcohol and it's just being recycled. And now I'm just all my trim and small buds and stuff that I don't feel like working on just gets turned into this beautiful golden amazing oil. And then I can turn it again into a CBN heavy oil just by cooking it on a coffee mug warmer and some silicone baking dishes for like a day or two. And it comes out like black and rich. And I put a little coconut oil in there, syringe it up, and that shit would make it cured my insomnia. I got rid of the cherry pie because of it. I was like, man, this stuff is just so effective. But I made the mistake of not using the lowest therapeutic dose. I was kind of getting like, well, I know people that take a gram a day for cancer. Maybe I'll be preventative and like kind of like big dick in it. Like I'm gonna take a gram and a half. I'm gonna take 2 grams. I'm gonna take as much as I can possibly stomach before like it started making me because there is a little alcohol in there. It started making my stomach a little upset when I
A
got to those
lot of oil
crazy
will do that too. That much, like a ton of oil is going to upset most people's stomach too. It's just,
mineral oil or any oil, olive oil, it's like it was just so much oil, grams and grams of oil, and like little, even though they were vegan gel capsules or whatever, like all those little half capsules I was taking or full capsules when I was just pumping them full, it was just too much. And I was realizing like, oh man, I could just instead of like taking all of this, like take as little as I possibly need, which ended up being like microdose kind of style. Like I take like point 0.1, point 0.2 and like a little capsule and then like see how I'd feel and like let that drag out for the few hours and then like maybe later in the day take another point 0.1, point 0.2, 0.25 at the most. And like over the day I might have a gram by taking 4.25s versus just like taking a gram in the morning, taking a gram at lunch, taking a gram at night just because I had it and I could. And I was just like, oh, well, I feel great when I take a gram. And then it's like that built my tolerance in a way that I stopped having the nice feelings. I was probably still getting the medical effects, even though I wasn't feeling high. Like I think they're like you're saying, even the people that don't metabolize the cannabinoids or feel the 11-hydroxy metabolite from an edible or RSO, orally consumed, I think there's still benefits like anti-inflammation, like or like a non-activated RSO, like when people don't decarb stuff. Although the coffee could be the thing that activates it. And THCA has a whole bunch of its own benefits. So people are like, well, I didn't get high because it's THCA, but you're getting all these anti-inflammatory, and I think there's like antiviral effects as well.
possibly
So
CBD. Who knows what, whatever, depending on how wide of a range of compounds you pulled when you made that oil, it's going to most likely be beneficial.
very true. And the one thing that I also didn't touch on that I had written down a little note on was I'm sort of one of those people who I feel like maybe on the Snoop Dogg or Tommy Chong or Joe Rogan side of the front, where I feel like a lot of cannabis actually for me, because I use so much at this point, can almost be appetite suppressing. Like I'll notice occasionally if I'm about to eat and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take this one bong toke right before I eat this, and the food's just gonna taste even better, and my appetite's gonna be ripping. I'll take that bong hit, and then I'm like, man, I'm kind of like not even hungry. And I think it's something about like the bong toke, like it stimulates like your esophagus and like your GI, like your whole, body is like getting hit by this thing, like even down to your stomach. Like sometimes you'll, if you take a huge bong hit and burp later, like sometimes smoke will come out.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that's
that's so
showing me it
funny.
gets caught in the system somewhere. And so I think some of that is happening with like a massive bong toke right before I eat that's like not giving me that. Because back in the day when I first started smoking, like everything I smoked gave me a huge appetite boost. And now,
There's
like
like certain
obviously,
compounds like THCV. That's one that was in the Project V.
yeah,
THCV is one that's been shown to suppress appetite for a lot of people, like the diet THC. They want to try to market it as.
diet weed. I've seen
Yeah.
people, there's brands and skinny weed and all that different stuff being made into like wines and tinctures and things like that. And, to their credit, I think going to harm reduction, like diabetics and people that are like struggling with weight and trying to eat less for any variety of reasons. Um, I was just talking about GLP drugs and things like that nature. Those are extremely popular. If we could have the GLP cannabis option, I think that would be nice because a lot of people don't like shots in general, but I think they've already made an oral pill version of a lot of the GLP, so that has allowed
Or you
that.
could just grow your own food too. Start doing that, and you won't. Amazing what that'll do for you.
It is unfortunately like we were talking about with caregivers for growing cannabis. A lot of people can't or won't grow their own food at this
Right.
point, and so it's about bridging that sort of first gap of let's get them.
We need
I think
caregivers
cannabis is
for
the
we need
gateway.
caregivers for vegetables, is what you're saying, Jack. I need
Pretty
okay,
much. Well, I just
I
saw that
see what you're
there's
saying.
somebody was saying, I don't know if it's Canada or the US, but I saw someone saying that they might try and do a federal registry for vegetable gardens. And
That's
somebody's like, yeah, I'm not going to participate in that.
yeah,
So
why would
fuck
I
that.
sign up for the government? Yeah, no.
Track
I'll
how
just
much
keep
food you
doing
grow.
my own thing and they can worry about you know, vegetable gardens.
It's crazy how much they go after like food gardens, man. I've seen like multiple now. HOAs go after like people that like have, food gardens and like, oh, it grew over a little bit over this fence. And like, yeah, it's not like the most sightly all the time because like gardens are a living thing. It goes and some stuff dies and some stuff gets overgrown, but they get back to it. Like every time I've seen the video of the gardens that were complained about, they were always like third party news organizations would go in and like look at both sides and try and be like, here's the neighbors complaining, here's the person with the garden, and like, what do you think? Let us know below. And it would just like show both sides of the story. And I'm like, man, whoever's bitching about this at the city or the neighbors is just like, you have so little time to fucking waste your. And I guess it's not a waste in their opinion. They can use their time however the fuck they want. But it makes me sad a little bit that people dedicate themselves to
Stop
pissing on
seeing
other
it.
people's fun and fire. Like, I don't know. It's like they see somebody's parade and they just want to go rain on it. And it's like how bad life has beaten them down that they just want. And that's
Yeah,
not the case
well,
every time. Maybe the garden is causing rodents to show up, or it's causing issues where the property
well, that's
values
what you
are
want.
going
Okay, so if
down.
the rodents are in the garden, they're not in your house. What are you bitching about? And stop fucking. If you're in the process of looking for a house, if you find out it's an HOA, walk away from that. Stop giving them money. Don't give them power. Take the power away.
Some people don't have that opportunity. Every
What do you mean?
home that I looked at,
There's some people that only have the option of an HOA and that's it? Is that what you're
well,
telling
like
me?
if you are looking to live in a certain city, for
Oh, I
example,
see what
like
you're
you have a
saying. You
job,
want to be stuck in a location.
yeah, well,
Pitch a tent on some land and buy that. It's a better investment.
you're probably right, to be honest. But yeah, the HOA thing has been that, and I think there's actually a lot of benefits of renting if people are able to, try and save some money and invest in other places and take advantage of like, well, something just broke in my bathroom, so I'm going to call the maintenance staff. And where I'm at now, thankfully, has a really good maintenance staff, so they come and fix it for free. I don't pay shit other than the rent. And people love to poo-poo the, renting, but a lot of people don't have the option. So I won't get too into that, but it's a reality. A lot of I know home growers out there, especially if you're the cheap home grower, you might be renting yourself out there. Not everybody. It's just so different state to state. Like if I lived in Ohio, I could definitely own a house because the property values there are a lot more reasonable than where I'm at in San Diego. So it's a choice that I've clearly made. I lived in a place where the life path and careers that I could have gone down, I would have much more foreseeably been in a home, even maybe by the current age I am now, that I could be owning or in the process of. I'm one of those weird people that feels like even when you buy a house, like until you pay it off, I'm a fan of thinking it's not yours because you owe the fucking bank. Same with
Oh, I
like
agree with that.
a car
Yeah, I
payment.
always said that. I always said that this is the bank's house until I fucking paid it off. But
And
it
then
felt
once,
so good, Jack. It feels so good when you walk in there and pay it off, though.
oh
But it
man, I
makes me
trust me,
feel
I know
good
I've had a
every
couple
year. The
loans that paid
government
off.
says, still give me that property tax or we're going to take it from you.
That's your rent. That's your rent to the old
Yeah,
government.
that's your forever rent, man, right there.
Unfortunately, that's the other thing. And it's like in California, the other scheme I see is they'll say, "Oh, we'll sell you this it's usually a trailer or a condo or something like that, but you don't own the land underneath it. So you're going to pay lot rent or space rent or
Oh,
whatever it
yeah,
is."
yeah.
I'm like, man,
The
that's a
trailer
fucking
parks, yeah, you
racket.
can buy a great trailer. It looks great and nice, but you never own the land, and they can bring the lot rent up on you every
Whenever
year.
they want, and by up to 10% in California, which is like that could get expensive really fast. If it's 1,300 a month the first month, then it's 1,400 and then, whatever. I don't know. It can get crazy fast.
Yeah, that's not ideal either, for sure.
But thankfully, you don't have to actually own that's a little jack tip that you have rights even as a renter. So even if you don't own your home, don't let landlords feel like they can bully you into not, especially if you have the option to get a medical license, do so because that offers you way more protection. But if your state allows you to grow, they can't tell you you can't unless you're like breaking some other, like don't steal power, right? Don't illegally route internet or something like that. Like do all of your things above board so you don't have to worry about the cannabis grow that you're legally operating with if you have the privilege to do so. I think as much as I don't love just following every rule and guideline if they're unnecessary or overbearing, I think if you do have the opportunity and like let's say they give you 12 plant count or something like that and you can make it work within that, then don't necessarily be floating around with 13 or 15 or 20 or something like that. Just like, if you're able to keep it within a decent limit, or just be careful with who you allow over and what you're posting, because sometimes, very oftentimes, law enforcement is on the internet. They probably have tuned into this very show, unfortunately, to try and figure out, what they consider the opposition. Some states out there where it's illegal to grow cannabis, or even the legal ones. Like Brandon right now is currently delving through a illegal operation that was in Oklahoma. So they just dumped a bunch of shit and greenhouses. This property owner was renting land to these individuals, and they set up a bunch of illegal cannabis grows. So it's you know, one of those things that you want to be on the right side of it. You don't want to be the one who's illegally growing the stuff and then having it all get torn down and it ending up potentially in jail and facing charges. If you can just be that little humble home grower, a lot of people that are here, obviously that's what you're trying to do. And I think we talked a good amount about that and the lovely effects of also cannabis and things like that. And I guess since we talked about flower and we got like 4 minutes left, I'll finish it up on that topic and ask you for the final thought on the whole light thing is what do you do to finish up the light cycle, the light spectrum? Do you change like from 12-12? Do you drop it down to 11-13? Do you do 12-12 all the way through? And do you change the light spectrum at all at the very end?
Don't change the cycle, so that stays the same at 12-12. Um, Ideally, if I can, if I'm all in the same cycle under the same light, I like to bring that, if I can bring the temperatures down, I like to do that at the very end, like last week maybe. And then I also like to change the spectrum to that same blue heavy spectrum again. So bringing the blues back, sneaking them back in. I like to do that for that last week because I feel like that last week's not enough to lose a lot in the yield that you would by, because you can maybe plump them up a little bit more for a week with the reds. But studies have been shown, and I've seen myself that when you add blue light in to the flower cycle, where there already is a full spectrum, it pushes cannabinoids higher. So that's why I do that.
I don't blame you, and that's why I do the very same thing in terms of at least wanting there to be that blue presence in the very end of the flower parting, finishing part of the spectrum and finishing part of the flower cycle. And yeah, I think it's always important to kind of go back and maybe talk a little bit about what might seem basic to people who've been growing for years now and talking about the flip because it's something we've talked about in past shows, but always nice to revisit because, like I said, I'm about to do it right now. A tip I'll say is just whenever changing a timer or a light cycle, double slash triple freaking check that you did not leave it on the on button. Because I have done that more times than I would care to admit. You hit that little switch because you're like, oh, I'm going in there to work on the plants before the lights come on. Click, and then it's like, oh, it's only 30 minutes before. It'll be fine. And it will be fine if you remember to turn that thing off. So that's unrelated to light cycles, just generally with timers. If you touch it, make like a very big note or like I don't know. There might even be some that have like a red light that turns on when it's on all the time or something like that. But
It's
try
my
your best.
SOP or my eyes every time before I go in the room, I look at the timer every time. And then when I close everything up, because mine's outside the room, I've got a light timer. And as I'm closing it up and the door's closed, that's what I look at it again. It's everything on. Okay, we're good. I can sleep.
I do love the new affordable options for tracking your temperature and humidity because if the light didn't go off and you're like, I normally see like a drop in temperature here when the light goes off and a little bit of a rise in humidity, why is that not happening? And even like with the, dropping most of the light out and leaving just a little red and blue, kind of like you do with the dimming, that helps regulate that so it's not such a sharp temperature drop and such a sharp RH spike. It's
Yeah.
more of like a gradual and then a gradual, which I'm much happier with. It's just, yeah, one of those things to consider when you're talking about the end of light cycle. But with that said, we got about 1 minute left, only one panelist, so it'll be nice and quick and easy. Pass it to Spartan Grown for final thoughts and shout outs before we close it up.
Thank you, Jack. I want to shout out Emily Anything Grows because we busted our ass this weekend in the yard to get, I would say we're 90% planted out for what we need to have done. So we added so much, we got a lot done. So I'm just so stoked. We're gonna have a big harvest this fall, and we're gonna be eating good. We already are. We've already been harvesting some lettuce out of there, and even took some microgreens from some kale microgreens because we had a kale went to seed, so it's just got a billion volunteers popping up, and I'm just taking them, cutting the roots off, and that's microgreens, baby. So yeah, shout out to Emily, man. She's really my better half for sure. Much love, everyone, and keep growing.
I will relate to that. Definitely shout out to Lady Greenstock and the team she's working with at AWC, American Weed Company, American Hemp Company. They just launched that new drink line up in Texas. So if you're in Texas, you can check that out. Shockingly, beverages are one of the things that they're allowing over there in terms of a lot of the hemp banned stuff. So they're pushing strong with the new beverage with really fast acting stuff. She said it impacted her in 6 minutes. I'm trying it tomorrow morning or Tuesday morning on a clear head. I've had some other stuff in the past and I've really enjoyed. I talked about their THC gummies and stuff like that. So I'm actually a fan of the product. Otherwise, I wouldn't mention talking about it on the podcast. And so shout out to her. Shout out to Lady Greenstock. Shout out to Anything Grows, Emily. And Spartan, eating those micro kale, that's so good for you, brother. You're going to live long and strong. And I have many Spartans saving me for many years to come on this show. I have a good feeling because sometimes it's just Jack and Spartan. But even if that's the case, we didn't even have to open up the panel this week. We still figured out a way to fill the whole 2 hours because last week we did an open panel. I was like, you know what? I think we'll just keep on rocking. And we figured it out. So thank you so much, Spartan Grown, for joining me. And thank you, everybody who joined us live on YouTube and anybody who comes to listen afterwards on X or on all the podcast platforms. Love you all so much. Really genuinely appreciate you. I wouldn't do this if we didn't have people keep showing up. Like and there are people that keep showing up. If I don't show up, I get DMs like, Jack, where are you? What happened? Where's the show? So I'm like, you know what? I got a responsibility at this point, and I take it very seriously. So I'll keep being here as much as I can be here. And when I can't, I'll try and make sure to have a Spartan or somebody else make sure that they can cover. But shout out to all the panelists, even who didn't make it, because they're all very generous with their time. We're all doing this out of the good of our hearts and to keep people growing. So overgrow, keep growing, and never stop. Grow love, spread it all around, and do good just so that there's good in the world. I love that concept, and keep it alive, people. Cheers. Catch y'all next week. Grows love.